American Comics. The containment object is exposed at the beginning. Chapter 81. The Red Sea world was originally a normal human world. It was because of being bewitched by the evil god who instigated war that it triggered a world war. Humans turned into terrifying unclean monsters, which led to the evil god's conspiracy to succeed and destroy the entire human civilization. According to the previous video, it seems that the number of unclean ones is too large and beyond the control of believers, causing believers to hide in space and wait for the opportunity to return to the Red Sea world to rule the earth. As for that evil god, Ancient One, I remember saying on the previous screen that the agent seemed to have encountered the evil god, and destroyed the disk that the evil god used to travel through the world, and locked it in the Red Sea world. Will he be trapped in it? What about the world we go to? Sanji. Wait a minute. If this is the case, then if we go in again, we might encounter the evil god. Chopper. Hey. I don't want to meet such a scary guy. Luffy. An evil god. It's interesting. I don't know what it is like. Nami. Idiot. Don't take risks. Tsunade. That is to say, if it is really in that world, it will try its best to find our lenses and travel to our world. Diana. If it dares to appear, I will definitely fight to the end. The evil god that causes war and destruction like this should not exist. Feng Yuan. Yes, I will definitely destroy it even if I risk my life. Sun Wukong. Hehe, I really want to fight it. Piccolo. Don't mess around. Marvel Karma Taj. After Ji Yuyi noticed this, his eyes were full of solemnity. It is her duty to fight against the evil god and protect the earth. Now that there was such a potential danger, she naturally had to be careful. But this Red Sea disk is in Asgard, and with Odin there, maybe nothing will happen for the time being. As long as that guy doesn't fall asleep. However, Ancient One knew about Odin's problem and had to show concern. One Piece World. Navy Headquarters. No. Akainu. Kizaru. You two immediately take 6 lieutenants and set off to the Shampoo Islands to block the Straw Hat Pirates. This thing is too dangerous in their hands. After the Warring States period understood the danger involved, he had to face this problem more seriously. Such a terrifying thing that can destroy the world cannot be placed in the hands of pirates. It must be controlled and protected by the Navy. Although Garp will definitely have objections to such a big battle, he can't care about that much at the moment. Akainu and Kizaru also understood the seriousness of the matter, so they arranged their manpower and prepared to go. At this time, Warring States was contacting Ching Pheasant. Hey, Chingjia, keep an eye on Garp for me. Ultraman Leo World. Feng Yuan looked at the Red Sea disk in disbelief. He completely forgot what the real danger was. Captain, what should you do if that evil god really escapes? Feng Yuan asked worriedly. Facing this kind of terrifying existence that invades multiple universes, he really has no confidence in fighting against it. Fight with all your strength. Zhu Xingtuan said seriously, this is the only way. Then he touched the ultra glasses on his chest. If he could still transform, he could launch ultra signatures to the Kingdom of Light and call his compatriots to deal with this matter. DC Universe. After Bruce Wayne also figured this out, he had to worry about Diana's side. Bruce Wayne. Diana. Is it okay for you to keep that disc by yourself? Diana. If I can't keep it, no one in the world can, so you don't have to worry about it. Bruce Wayne. This is no joke. I think it would be best for us to meet. Diana. Humph, I don't have time for you playboy. Tony Stark. Brother, your skills in dating girls are too poor. It seems that others take the initiative to find you. You have no experience in taking the initiative. Bruce Wayne. I don't want to talk about this with you. Jiraiya. I didn't expect that there would be such a crisis, saying that I can't enter the Red Sea world again. Piccolo. We really can't be too troublesome. Sun Wukong, do you understand? Sun Wukong. Hey. Nobita. Even if you kill me, I won't go in. Tony Stark. Hey, are you really going to back down like this? Don't forget that there is unknown advanced technology in that world. Don't you want to get it? And I also want to trade with Doraemon. Doraemon. This is really too dangerous, it's better not to take it. Natasha. Stark, can't you prioritize? Tony Stark. No. I know very well that if such a terrible thing suddenly appears now, will it also appear in the future? Are the rewards we get enough to fight against it? We need more power. Quote. Warring states. I understand what you said, but if you really want to go in again, you need to be fully prepared. Nick Fury. Indeed, let's wait until we are strong enough. Tony Stark. Anyway, I won't give up. It's a pity that the disk is on an alien planet. It's really troublesome. Odin. Humph, there's no way I can bring it to the atrium. Odin returned to Asgard and looked at the disk in his hand. An evil god from another universe. It made him a little curious what it was like. But if he really dares to pass it over and run to Asgard, he must go all out to kill it. Lord Odin, Lord Thor, they have woken up. Heimdall came over and said. Odin nodded after hearing this. He was going to see his son and educate him. In Marvel's Shield, Tony Stark was a little unwilling to see that everyone did not adopt his opinion. He knew how dangerous the Red Sea world was, but he was really eager for the explosive technology, trading with Doraemon, and getting Gunterra's plasma light cannon data, etc. Just thinking about this, he couldn't help but slap his fingers on the table. Nick Fury next to him sighed helplessly when he saw this. He had the same idea, but he would not take the risk. What's more, the Red Sea disk is not here with them. The next containment object will be played, no, 2, and 2 containment objects will appear next. Just then the sound from the screen sounded. Let everyone pay attention to the past again. This time there are actually 2 kinds. The last time they appeared at the same time was the beast that mimicked sounds and the unstoppable chopper. What will happen this time? In the universe of contained objects, there are some terrifying creatures related to sight, the most famous of which is the Weeping Angel. However, in addition to it, there are 2 particularly terrifying creatures related to sight. After the voice on the screen finished speaking, 2 pictures appeared. One is a black skull-like statue. The other was a large black dog. Evil god statue. As soon as they heard that it was related to the evil god, everyone immediately stared at the statue of the evil god on the screen. Tony Stark. Could this have something to do with the evil god in the Red Sea world? Tony Stark's question represented everyone's curiosity, and they all looked at the screen nervously, wanting to know the answer. There is not only one evil god. The statue of the evil god predicted in this screen has nothing to do with the evil god in the Red Sea world. The screen seemed to sense everyone's questions, and this line of text appeared to answer them. Let everyone clear up their doubts after seeing this. But there was more than one evil god, which made some people couldn't help but worry. Marvel World, Karmatage. Yi was not surprised by this. As someone who had dealt with various extraterrestrial demons for a long time, he had long known that there was more than one evil god. I don't know what the evil god from the containment universe will be like. Ancient Yi couldn't help but look curiously at the statue of the evil god on the screen. Then the screen begins to explain. The black dog is named Death Star. This dog is like a messenger from hell. It will spray flames, or use its claws and fangs to destroy any living thing it touches. Its body is extremely hard, and bullets cannot even scratch its skin. It can only use the power of explosion to destroy any living thing it touches. Only powerful weapons can damage it, but this creature's regeneration ability is extremely strong. If you don't continue to attack, you won't be able to seriously injure it. The voice on the screen began to explain. When they first heard this, everyone thought it was nothing and thought this dog was nothing more than that. However, the following introduction made everyone uneasy. However, if the Death Star had only this ability, it would not be called so. Its more terrifying ability is the curse of its sight. Once anyone looks at it, then that person will definitely die. Not just that person, his relatives will also die for no reason. When the screen said this, a film and television screen appeared. It was a group of heavily armed mobile task forces, firing on something unknown. The ground was full of flames, charred corpses, and bullet casings. It looked like a fierce battle. The Death Star is on the left, attack with howitzers immediately, machine gunners are ready. An urgent order came, and then several members of the task force immediately raised their grenade launchers, and heavy machine guns fired towards the left side. There were countless big explosions, flying sand and rocks, and a sea of fire all over the place. Boo! Then a black shadow rushed out through the smoke. If you look closely, you can see that it is a 2-meter tall black dog. This black dog looks no different from an ordinary dog in appearance, but it is more ferocious and terrifying. And sparks were constantly released from his mouth. Then it opened its mouth and sprayed out a stream of blazing flames, shooting towards the mobile task force members. This terrifying flame has not touched anything yet. It just relies on the heat of the fire wave to ignite nearby flammable objects. It is difficult to imagine how terrifying the actual flame is. Spread out. The captain shouted, and everyone rushed around to avoid the terrible flames. However, two unlucky ones were too late and were swept away by the flames. Their whole bodies were instantly engulfed in flames, and their protective clothing was unable to protect them. After a moment of painful twitching, he fell to the ground motionless. At this time, the Death Star rushed in front of several members of the task force, attacked with his claws, and broke the weapons in their hands. How can the task force that is undoubtedly lost still be the opponent of the Death Star? In addition, the Death Star moved quickly and cut off the necks of several task forces with its claws in the blink of an eye. It's obviously a dog, but it has the same movements and speed as a top killer. Bang bang bang. The remaining people quickly took out their pistols and fired. However, after the bullets touched their bodies, they had no effect at all, and instead all bounced away. Hoo ho ho. The next second, the Death Star sprayed out fierce flames and strafed the soldiers, burning them one by one. Only one soldier was lucky and fell down in time. His whole body was not burned, but his helmet was scratched. The fire is rapidly expanding. This scared the soldier and quickly took off his helmet and threw it aside to avoid being burned. Goo. At this moment, the evil star of death came in front of the man. One person and one dog, facing each other. Not good. The other members of the task force were shocked when they saw this. However, it was too late for them to do anything. The Death Star did not attack the person on the opposite side, but showed a humanized mockery and immediately ran away. Pursue. Don't let it get away. The captain immediately ordered the others to pursue the Death Star. Team leader. At this time, the soldier ran up to his captain anxiously and looked at him with fear on his face. What should I do? What should I do? I don't want to die. The soldier shouted to the captain with great excitement. The captain looked at the soldier silently, and he didn't know what kind of eyes and expression he showed under the mask. Captain. Captain. Seeing that the captain didn't answer him, the soldier could only anxiously grab the captain's thigh and shake him. But the next second, he suddenly stopped moving. His expression was dull for a moment, and then the color of his skin suddenly faded away. Puff. Finally, the soldier vomited violently, spitting out a lot of ashes, and then fell heavily. Goodbye, my comrade, we will avenge you. The captain's tone was quite heavy, with a bit of sadness, and then he left here. Not long after, the soldier's family members and relatives all died suddenly without exception. According to forensic examination, all their organs that should have belonged to humans disappeared, and instead, their bodies were filled with ash. Completely subverts scientific understanding. This Death Star is really terrifying. When it moves around to attack others, it has looked into the eyes of countless people. Even if it's just for a second, once you meet your eyes with it, everything in your body will turn to ashes and die soon. Together with their relatives, they suffered the same fate. Therefore, the mobile task force that captures it must use special masks to block their sight, and rely on artificial intelligence to provide location information for combat. After an unknown number of people died, the shelter finally caught the black dog. Seeing this, many people were shocked that this dog was so scary. Nick Fury. You will die just by looking at each other, and your family and relatives will also die together. What a vicious curse is this? King. Curse magic. This must be curse magic. As the manager of the Kamatage Library, Wong knows all kinds of magic better than anyone else, including curse magic. The curse magic that can kill others out of thin air without any action, and even implicate relatives, is in his memory. It's just that this kind of magic is extremely complicated to prepare and requires the power of the evil god to do it. But the Death Star can trigger such an ability just by looking at each other. This is too powerful. Tony Stark. The Death Star is truly worthy of his name. Bruce Wayne. Just looking at each other can have such big consequences, why are there such terrifying creatures? Naruto. Compared to this dog, that statue is relatively weak. At least it won't involve so many people. Waring states. Indeed, to put it harshly, if you want to deal with such a terrifying monster, you have to find orphans without relatives. Tsunade. That's not necessarily true. As long as they are related by blood, they are all relatives. Who knows how many hidden relatives I have? Kizaru. But it's not difficult to deal with, as long as you use the haki of seeing and hearing to sense it. Naruto. If I use a shadow clone, will the clones look at each other affect the main body? Jiraiya. It's best not to test this kind of thing randomly. While everyone was busy discussing, the sound on the screen continued. Another site-related horror containment object, the evil god statue, is easier to deal with than the Death Star. The sound on the screen interrupted everyone's discussion. They were quite curious about the abilities of this statue named Evil God. This statue first appeared in an art gallery. No one knew how it appeared. Even the museum owner didn't know where it came from. He was about to throw it away, but no one expected that when it was discovered, the accident happened. Late at night, the curator of the art museum died inexplicably. The cause of his death turned out to be myocardial infarction. However, this art museum director is obviously in good health and cannot suddenly suffer a myocardial infarction. This is undoubtedly a very strange thing. The issue of death due to illness is not originally under the control of our shelter. After all, similar things happen all over the world. But when there are more and more victims, the situation is different. Not only the museum director, but also many people died of myocardial infarction that night. They were either museum staff or had been to the museum on the same day, which meant that the common denominator in everything was the museum. As the police investigated, when they called up the surveillance video, they discovered something extremely shocking. That is, some people were fine at first, but in the next second, a statue suddenly appeared out of thin air, overwhelming them, and then the statue disappeared instantly. And that person died of myocardial infarction. This phenomenon is not just for one person, but has happened to many people who died suddenly during their lifetime. Whether in the car, in the bathroom, or on the bed, the statue would appear without warning, overwhelm them, and then disappear again. And according to the monitoring time, these people did not die at the same time, but at least a few seconds apart. In other words, this statue was killing these people one by one in order. Through the staff of the art museum, it was discovered that this statue was the one that suddenly appeared in the art museum with unknown origins. This phenomenon immediately attracted the attention of the containment committee, who immediately took over the matter to investigate the statue of the evil god and tried their best to contain it. According to research, once this statue is seen by someone, that person's fate is sealed. He must keep looking at the statue and cannot look away, otherwise he will lose sight of the statue. This statue will move instantly in some weird way in the order it is seen, killing everyone who sees it one by one. Therefore, if you want to contain this statue, you must either ensure that no one sees it at all, or several people must take turns watching it to ensure that the statue is always within sight. Even if the person who sees it looks away, as long as other people are looking at it, the abnormality of the statue will not be activated. Since the image of this statue is the same as that of the evil god, and the way of killing is quite strange, the shelter simply calls it the statue of the evil god. As for whether it is related to the real evil god, it is still under investigation. When the screen said this, the picture stopped abruptly. Many people couldn't help but take a breath to calm themselves down. Modu. I think this is probably related to the evil god. Who would inexplicably make such a terrifying statue? Diana. Does that mean that this statue has the curse of the evil god, so it has such an abnormality? Mordo. I think it's very possible. Nobita. Uua, it makes my skin crawl. Naruto. This is scary. Tony Stark. Hey, don't be so nervous. Although this statue is scary, it'll be fine as long as someone keeps looking at it. It's as easy to deal with as the weeping angel. Strange. That's so easy for you to say. Now predict the universe where the evil god statue and the Death Star will appear. Just then, the sound from the screen interrupted everyone's discussion. Everyone looked at the screen nervously, wondering in which universe these two containment objects would appear, or in other words, how many universes would they appear in. Leo's world. Feng Yuan looked at the screen slightly nervously. If I transform into Leo, I should be able to destroy these two with one move, right? Feng Yuan thought for a while and felt that it was impossible for him to lose. Doraemon World. Doraemon. Do you have a way to deal with these two things? Nobita asked nervously, looking at Doraemon. Don't worry, just don't look at them. I have a few props that can do it. As Doraemon said this, he checked his props to make sure they could be taken out at any time. Naruto World. Hehe, as long as I use the shadow clone to deal with it, I won't be afraid. Naruto said with a smile. In his opinion, with the power of the Kyuubi, he must be able to fight against these two things. Idiot. Don't be careless. Jiraiya next to him heard this and punched Naruto in the head. You're right. No matter what, we can't let down our guard. Tsunade next to her nodded, and then looked at the Red Sea disc tied around Jiraiya's neck as a necklace. It's just that it doesn't matter if this thing is put on you like this. Tsunade asked worriedly. It's the best way to not give it a chance to connect to a mirror. Jiraiya nodded and replied. Ever since he learned about the evil god in the Red Sea world, he was worried that no matter how small the tunnel was, the evil god would be attracted, so he decided to wear it on himself. Don't let the Red Sea disc have any chance of coming into contact with the lens. Be careful anyway. After Tsunade reminded her, she looked at the screen. It is predicted that the contained objects, the evil god statue and the Death Star, will soon appear on Earth in the Marvel Universe. Please be prepared. The screen makes a sound. People in other universes were a little relieved to hear that they only appeared in the Marvel Universe, and some were a little regretful. After all, these two containment objects seemed easy to get, and they could get good rewards. Show up to us. Tony Stark's eyes lit up and he stared at the screen. I saw two images on the screen. One looked like it was in a small town. There was a big black dog wreaking havoc everywhere, constantly breathing fire, hurting others, and causing fires. The other is a metropolis. On a sidewalk, a statue of the evil god appeared out of thin air, attracting countless people to watch. Fake. That statue has been seen. Nick Fury shouted anxiously after seeing this. Hey, don't worry. Didn't you see so many people looking at the statue when they passed by? With so many people, it's impossible for the statue to be completely out of sight. Tony Stark wasn't worried at all. We'd better determine the containment plan now. These two monsters cannot look at each other. I can use Shadow Ninja to deal with the evil god statue. At this time Natasha stood up and said. Shadow ninjas can continue to regenerate even if they are sacrificed, and they can be continuously created to keep an eye on the statue in turn to prevent it from expanding its harm. After Nick Fury heard Natasha's opinion, his eyes immediately lit up and he felt it made sense. In that case, leave the statue of the evil god to the beauty, and I'll deal with the black dog. Tony Stark volunteered. If he wanted to get the reward of the screen, he had to fight in person. No problem, but in this case, you will join my Avengers. Nick Fury did not reject Tony Stark's idea, but instead put forward his own conditions. Hey, I'm not going to join your group of super-powered boys. After Tony Stark made a joke, he walked away and made a call at the same time. Jarvis, take control of my armor and pick me up. Upon seeing this, Nick Fury immediately coordinated the agents to handle the matter. The matter would affect public opinion, personnel evacuation, logistics, etc. must be in place. As a veteran, he quickly assigned this little thing to the task. But what he didn't know was that someone was secretly sending these things out. At this time, in that small town, the Death Star was raging everywhere, constantly burning any living thing it saw. From humans to animals, no one can escape the flames of the Death Star. Monster. At this moment, a big man pointed a shotgun at the Death Star and started spraying it. However, the bullet had no effect at all and was directly deflected. Gululu. Death Star glanced at the big man with disdain. At this moment their eyes met. You monster, I'm not afraid of you. The big man was so frightened that he spoke loudly, but his hands holding the gun kept shaking. Just when he was about to pull the trigger and fire the second shot, the Death Star showed human ridicule, then turned around and left quickly. This made the big man look confused. Why was he suddenly saved? Before he could think clearly, he suddenly felt extremely uncomfortable in his body, as if something was blocking everything in his body, making it impossible for him to breathe. In the end, the big man opened his mouth in pain, as if he wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Instead, he spit out a lot of ashes, and finally fell heavily to the ground and died completely. Not only this big man, but also his relatives suffered the same death. Without exception, the corpses of relatives were filled with ashes inside. This sudden death instantly caused a sensation. However, the bigger sensation was that the Death Star was raging everywhere on this side. After it slaughtered a small town, it continued to look for densely populated places. The massacre was posted online and quickly attracted media attention. Many media helicopters flew close to this town and followed the fire to find the Death Star who was massacring the next town. Who would miss such sensational news? Report it immediately. Special News reported that in a small town in a certain area, a black dog that breathed fire suddenly appeared and was setting fire to the local residents wantonly. The police were unable to resist. Major TV stations have broadcast this news one after another. Through the TV screen, you can see the Death Star, which is constantly breathing fire and burning any creature it sees. Turn the surrounding area into a sea of fire. The police tried hard to resist this terrible monster, but no matter how they fired, they could not hurt the black dog. And the strange thing is that Death Star took one look at them and ran away. Soon after, the policemen who had stared at it died violently, with ash spewing from their mouths. There is another piece of news, which may have something to do with this black dog. Within 3 hours, people kept dying suddenly. And according to the forensic investigation, all the dead had no organs and were instead filled with ashes. I don't know if it has anything to do with this scary black dog. Is this a demon from hell or a sanction from God? Then the TV screen showed interviews with mayors, national leaders and the like. Everyone is asking what to do next. These leaders said that they have sent troops to deal with it, so that everyone can feel at ease. Now people all over the United States are watching this news and are in shock. They didn't expect that such a terrifying monster would appear. However, just because of the interruption of this news, all the eyes that would have inadvertently glanced at the statue of the evil god disappeared. Something more terrible happened. Through the broadcast on the screen of the shelter, people from all over the world clearly saw that the statue of the evil god that was originally standing on the street suddenly disappeared out of thin air. By the time it appeared, it had already overwhelmed a person. The man seemed to have lost his breath of life. After killing one person, the evil god statue continues to kill the next person who sees it, and repeats itself. The surrounding people who were looking down at the scene were looking at their mobile phones or watching the TV broadcast, but they did not notice that a horrific massacre was taking place around them. By the time they noticed, thousands of people had died. What happened? Why did someone suddenly die? Run. The sudden death of so many people frightened the people around them, causing them to flee in all directions, not wanting to stay within the range of the corpses. At this moment, the dark pupils of the evil god statue seemed to emit a trace of red light. The crowd kept running away from this terrifying scene, but running away could not get rid of the threat of the evil statue. Those who take one look at the statue of the evil god will eventually die. The statue of the evil god disappeared in an instant. When it appeared, another person died, and the cycle started over and over again, constantly hunting down those who had seen him. Now there is a major piece of news in the United States. A series of deaths appeared inexplicably in the square. Is it an attack from ghosts or a curse from the devil? What does it have to do with the black dog from hell? At this moment, the entire United States was in a state of excitement. Seeing so much terrible news, it was difficult for them to do their own thing with peace of mind, and they watched the news broadcast in stunned silence. At the same time, a group of activists marched under various government buildings and asked them to find a way to deal with this matter. Many officials came forward to reassure people and said they would deal with it. Now SHIELD's phone calls are almost exploding, with countless leaders asking what measures SHIELD can take. We have sent people to deal with it, but it will take time. Nick Fury kept roaring, repeating the same sentence, and looked at the screen anxiously. He has no way to deal with the Death Star for the time being, but the evil god statue can prevent action as long as one person looks at it. So Nick Fury asked the leaders to arrange manpower to stare at the evil statue. As a result, everyone felt that Nick Fury's statement was very unreasonable and rejected them all, which made Nick Fury want to punch people over the phone. In that case, just wait for my agents to handle it. After Nick Fury finished speaking angrily, he cut off all the phone lines and did not want to pay attention to these leaders. Then stare at the screen. After a while, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Quinjet appeared, and the statue of the evil god was raging in the square. This made Nick Fury relax. Natasha, the rest is up to you. Nick Fury requested over the intercom. No problem. After Natasha replied, she put on the Terra mask and summoned the Black Shadow Ninja. While staring at the statue, transport it to the fighter plane. You can't look away during this period, understand? Natasha pointed in the direction of the statue, controlled herself not to look, and ordered the Shadow Ninja. After receiving the order, the Black Shadow Ninja immediately bowed to Natasha to express his understanding, then turned into a shadow and quickly approached the statue of the evil god. At this time, the evil god statue has killed an unknown number of people. If anyone observes carefully, they will find that its eyes seem to be emitting red light. Boo! Just when the statue of the evil god was about to teleport to chase the next target, the shadow ninjas appeared around the statue of the evil god one after another, making eye contact to prevent the statue of the evil god from continuing to move. Then they picked up the evil god statue and walked towards the Quinjet. Immediately afterwards, a group of agents wearing sunglasses came over and surrounded the area to prevent others from seeing inside, so as not to increase the number of victims of the evil statue. When the people around saw someone coming to deal with this matter, they approached curiously and wanted to take pictures, but they were scolded and left by S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Subsequently, a large number of police officers were ordered to arrive to maintain order at the scene. At this time, a group of reporters were coming to interview. Can you please tell us what is going on? What are you transporting? Who are those people dressed like ninjas? What on earth is that? Please answer, what does it have to do with the current death incident? Which department are you from? The reporters were all talking and asking various questions, but the agents remained tight-lipped and refused to answer a single word. This is not because they are pretending to be cold, but because they themselves don't know what is going on, so they can only remain silent and say nothing. Natasha saw through the surveillance video that the Black Shadow Ninja had carried the evil statue to the plane, and she breathed a sigh of relief. Very good, now the Dark Ninja will continue to stare at the statue of the evil god. No one else is allowed to look at it. Now go back to S.H.I.E.L.D. After Natasha gave the order, the Quinjet officially took off and flew towards the distance. Now it's no problem. Fortunately, Natasha's group of Black Shadow Ninjas have unlimited output. Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this scene, now there was one less threat. Although this evil god statue is particularly weird, as long as someone is looking at it, it will be fine. It is very easy to deal with. Speaking of that weeping angel, how's the research going? When Nick Fury thought of this, he picked up the walkie-talkie and contacted the laboratory to ask. The reply was that nothing could be researched. If they hadn't seen the weeping angel's ability with their own eyes, everyone would have thought it was just an ordinary concrete statue. This can't be some kind of magic, right? Do you want to contact those magicians? Nick Fury looked at the screen and thought of those people in Ancient One who claimed to be mages. These people are also uncertain factors and it is best to get in touch with them as soon as possible. By the way, Director, you asked us to allocate manpower to study the Rubik's Cube. It's not going well. The Rubik's Cube has been restless. I don't know if something will happen. Do you want to continue studying it? At this time, the researcher brought up the matter of the cosmic Rubik's Cube. Because after Nick Fury saw the horror of the containment, he issued an order to speed up the research on the cosmic cube. It would be best if it could reach the speed of light fighter developed by the Chris scientist. I didn't expect the obstacles to be so big. Continue research and development. Our world is very unsafe and needs the power of the Rubik's Cube. Nick Fury urged. Not to mention the contained objects, Asgard alone is a threat to him, and humans must master powerful weapons as soon as possible. Speaking of which, should we let Stark participate in the research of the cosmic Rubik's Cube? With his talent, he might be able to break through something. Hill on the side suggested. Nick Fury was silent for a moment, then shook his head. It's better not to do it. This is top secret after all. Hill said nothing after hearing this and acquiesced in Nick Fury's decision. Then they looked at Death Star's screen. Now the big black dog has stepped onto the edge of the city, burning anyone who dares to stop it. Nothing can stop its progress. Boo. In the next second, many missiles fell from the sky and hit the Death Star, causing many big explosions and blowing it away. Faced with such a terrible explosion, Death Star only had some wounds on his body, and then began to heal automatically. Hey, big dog, I can't let you be arrogant anymore. I saw Tony Stark wearing Iron Man equipment falling from the sky and standing in front of the Death Star, with all the cannons aimed at it. Inside the helmet, Iron Man has turned off his visual system to see the outside world. Jarvis, make sure the big dog is right in front of me. Yes, sir, it is 88 meters in front of you. If you fire now, it will be easily avoided. Jarvis replied. Now Tony Stark turns off the visual system of Iron Man's equipment and relies on Jarvis to act as his eyes so that he can deal with the Death Star. Great. As soon as Tony Stark finished speaking, he felt the heat on the opposite side and flew up without thinking. Just dodged a bunch of fierce flames. Ho ho ho. Death Star felt extremely angry when he saw an Iron Man suddenly appearing to block him, so he rushed directly towards Tony Stark while constantly breathing fire attacks. Sir, immediately fly up to avoid and distance yourself. After hearing Jarvis' instructions, Tony Stark immediately flew up to avoid the flames. The Death Star is on the ground 45 degrees to your left. It is recommended that you launch a dense missile bombardment. Thanks, Jarvis. After Tony Stark replied, he immediately aimed at a position of 45 degrees to the left and continuously launched micro-missiles and pulse cannons to attack. Bomb the Death Star there. The Death Star was knocked around by the huge explosive weapon, fell heavily to the ground, but then jumped up immediately. Then it actually hit the vehicle next to it so hard that it flew up and was thrown towards Tony Stark. Sir, there are a large number of cars flying in front of you, retreat immediately. Shit. Tony Stark cursed and immediately flew back to avoid the oncoming cars. Boom. 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 At this time, violent collision sounds continued to be heard from the flying cars. Upon closer inspection, it turned out that Death Star was using these cars as pedals, constantly leaping over them, approaching Tony Stark. Before Jarvis could remind him, Death Star had jumped behind Tony Stark and closed his teeth to bite the neck of Mark's suit. Creak, creak, creak. The bite force of the Death Star is amazing, and it can actually bite the armor made of space satellite materials, making a creaking sound. If it were made of ordinary metal, it would probably be bitten through. Aha! Got you. Tony Stark turned his hands over and grabbed Death Star's body, and then quickly approached the ground. Jarvis, increase all the power of Mark's armor to his arms. Yes, sir. Then Tony Stark felt that the strength of his hands had increased a lot, and then he forcibly tore off the Death Star and smashed it towards the ground. Boom. A heavy impact sounded, and at this moment, a large hole and many cracks were made in the cement floor. Death Star was so dizzy by this move that the corners of his mouth began to bleed. As expected. You are a living creature after all. You can be beaten to death. After hearing Jarvis's report, Tony Stark was so excited that he punched Death Star on the head repeatedly. Just sleep well, you stinky dog. While cursing, Tony Stark gathered the energy of Mark's armor into his chest, preparing to kill the dog with the most powerful chest pulse cannon. He didn't believe that the armor he had spent all his energy to build could not stand up to a stinky dog. Ah! At this moment, the Death Star suddenly roared with force, opened his mouth, and just when Tony Stark's fist was about to hit him, he closed his mouth and bit the arm directly. Ah! This scene stunned Tony Stark for a moment. Sir, if you could see it now, you would see its eyes full of hatred and anger. At this time, Jarvis reported like this. Is it too late for me to apologize now? Tony Stark couldn't help but ask. Ah. At this time, Death Star let out a violent howl while using his mouth to lift Tony Stark up, and then slammed it to the ground. This was not the end yet. He kept shaking Tony Stark's body vigorously, and slapped him towards the ground around him. Tony Stark inside the armor was so beaten that he screamed in pain and felt that all the bones in his body were about to fall apart. Jarvis, tell me the best time to fire. Tony Stark cried out in pain. Sir, you can't hit it in your condition. Jarvis's voice was quite anxious, and he couldn't tell when was the right time to fire. Now Iron Man is just like the famous scene in Loki, being thrown around, but the object is a big black dog, which looks particularly funny. Quickly calculate. Tony Stark almost spoke with his tongue curled up, fearing that he would bite it off as soon as he opened his mouth. After receiving the order, Jarvis quickly analyzed the Death Star's movements and judged the best time. Fire in 1 second. Emission. After hearing this, Tony Stark immediately fired the pulse cannon that had been charged in his chest for a long time. This cannon concentrates 80% of the energy and fires it out, and its power is not ordinary. Boom, boom, boom. A dazzling beam of light rose from the ground, and a terrifying shock wave swept around, sending a large number of cars flying out, and even the ground continued to collapse. A figure flew out of the blast wave. It was Tony Stark wearing the Mark armor. He fell heavily to the ground like a meteorite. Just as he was about to stand up, he was hit by the falling car and buried underneath. Relying on the only energy, he had to move the pile of cars with great effort to stand up. My waist, I hope it can still be used. Tony Stark walked out holding his waist, feeling that his body would fall apart with every step. Jarvis, scan where the big dog is. I don't believe it can still stand up after being hit by such a powerful move of mine. Tony Stark ordered. Bang! In the next second, 2 cars were knocked away not far away. Then the Death Star slowly crawled out. It was no longer as terrible and majestic as before. Instead, it was covered with serious and hot wounds all over its body, and its skeleton could be seen inside. Goo 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 goo. The Death Star stared at the Iron Man in front of it with eyes full of incomparable resentment. Since it came to this world to stir up trouble, when has it ever suffered such a big injury? Woo 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 woo. The Death Star staggered and looked at Tony Stark, enduring the pain of his body as much as possible. Its resentful eyes wished that it could eat the iron in front of it alive. Jarvis, how much energy do I have now? Is it enough to defeat it? Tony asked Jarvis hurriedly. Sir, there is less than 15% of energy left now. I'm afraid it will be difficult to defeat it. Jarvis replied. Okay, then concentrate the remaining energy into your fist. I want to knock this stinky dog out with one punch. Under Tony's order, all the remaining energy of Mark's armor was concentrated into his right fist. Then Tony slowly squatted down and got into a fighting stance. As soon as the big black dog pounced, he would punch it. If I can't do it with this punch, then I won't be able to sing. Now Tony Stark feels a little regretful. He seems to be a little anxious and should have made more preparations, but he can't care so much now. Ah! At this time, the Death Star howled and rushed towards Tony Stark. Tony took a deep breath after hearing Jarvis' report. As long as he waited for Jarvis' prompt, he would punch him. The atmosphere was particularly tense at this moment. Although Death Star was seriously injured, he was still not satisfied with his speed. In a blink of an eye, he ran in front of Tony Stark and was about to bite him. Sir, it's now. Jarvis instantly conveyed the world. Tony was about to punch after hearing this. Boom. But at this moment, a silver figure fell from the sky and stepped on the Death Star. The noise made by this was not small, and it directly knocked the Death Star out. I saw a silver-gray armor with a heavy fire machine gun on its shoulders, standing on top of the Death Star, looking calmly at Iron Man in front of him. Sir, please stop, Colonel Roddy's presence has been detected. After Jarvis saw the situation in front of him, he immediately reported it to Tony. What? What about the Death Star? Tony Stark, who had been prepared, was stunned for a moment when he heard this. Already fainted. Restore the visual system. When Tony Stark heard this, he immediately regained his vision and saw that he had given it to Roddy. No, it was the war machine that Roddy forced to pass through. War Machine's mask opened, revealing the black face on the ground. Hey Stark, I saved a life, looks like you've cheered up. Although Roddy didn't understand what was going on, seeing Tony Stark standing here fighting against the terrifying creatures, he felt that he must be fine. Well, I'm always in great shape. After Tony opened his mask, he looked at Roddy with an arrogant face. You know, I almost beat this dog to death just now. You missed a good show. Tony Stark said with an arrogant look. Yes, I just saw how miserable you were being tossed around. Roddy replied helplessly. Wait a minute. You just saw it, when did you come? Tony immediately pointed at Roddy after hearing this. The first time you were thrown out, but I promise not to tell anyone. Roddy had a smirk on his face, which made Tony roll his eyes and facepalm. Wait a minute, that's not just you. Tony immediately thought of something and looked at the screen. All I saw was a bunch of information above. Luffy. Wow. This armor is so handsome, what is it? Frankie. This looks like a high-tech armor. It can fly and fire. It's a man's dream. Naruto. So handsome. Nobita. It's really cool. I really want an armor like this. Morohoshiden. You have a robot like Doraemon, are you still worried about not having armor? Nobita. Yeah. I want Doraemon too. Doraemon. No, you still have to do your homework. When Tony saw that no one cared about him being tossed around, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, no one knew that he was so embarrassed. Buzz buzz. At this moment, the Quinjet dropped from the sky, opened the hatch and Coulson came out. Mr. Stark, the cage is ready. The dog can be locked in. Thank you for your help, Colonel Roddy. Coulson shouted, waving his hands, looking at their armor, his eyes couldn't help but shine with starlight. Okay. After Tony finished speaking, he carried the Death Star, not forgetting to cover its eyes. Wait a minute, isn't that an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Tony, when did you start working for S.H.I.E.L.D.? Rhodey asked with a puzzled look on his face. No. They begged me to do something for them. Tony replied before getting on the plane. Would you like a ride? Tony asked looking at Roddy. No, I was ordered to come here to investigate, and I have to go back and respond. What should I tell them? Should I just pass it on to S.H.I.E.L.D.? Rhodey asked rhetorically. Yes, tell them to negotiate with S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony said while throwing the Death Star into the sealed box prepared in the Quinjet. This was specially made by him. It was made of titanium alloy. It contained a large amount of freezing gas and top-notch anesthetics. It also used titanium alloy chains to restrain the Death Star. He didn't believe that even this could trap the big black dog. Goodbye, Roddy, this armor suits you very well. Tony waved and shouted while the plane was still closed. Goodbye, by the way, tonight is the Hammer Industrial Exhibition. It's the weapons they added to me. You can come and take a look tonight. After Roddy finished speaking, he took off and left here. How dare you approach Hammer Industries? After hearing this, Tony had to twitch his lips and shook his head helplessly. Then sit on the chair. Hey, give me a coffee and a burger, I'm really tired right now. Tony directed Coulson to plead. Sorry sir, there's none here. Coulson replied with a smile. Don't you know how to reward heroes who come back from fighting? This made Tony couldn't help but roll his eyes. Sorry, but can you tell me what's going on with this big black dog? Coulson looked at the big iron box. The ability this dog showed was really terrifying. Just treat it like the god of death from hell, and ask your director for the rest. Tony directly handed over the power of explanation to Nick Fury, then remained silent, looking out the window and tapping his fingers. Strange. Why haven't the rewards been distributed yet? Tony couldn't help but wonder. In the past, others immediately distributed rewards as soon as they took the containment objects, so why haven't they been rewarded now? And there seems to be something wrong. Tony looked at the scenery outside the window and felt something strange, so he leaned over to take a look. Hey, Coulson, are we heading to S.H.I.E.L.D. on the route we're traveling on now? Tony found that the direction to S.H.I.E.L.D. was completely opposite to the current direction of flight, so he had to ask. After hearing this, Coulson also noticed something was wrong and immediately walked towards the driver. Hey, where are you going? In the next second, the heavily armed agent in the passenger seat suddenly stood up, raised his rifle and pointed it at Coulson. Coulson was so frightened that he quickly backed away. Swish, swish, swish. Not only the agent in the passenger seat, but also several other agents in the Quinjet raised their guns and pointed them at Coulson and Tony. If you don't want to die, don't act rashly. The agent in the passenger seat glared at Coulson and Tony and threatened. Hey Coulson, when did your agent become a plane robber? Tony looked at this scene and actually had the heart to joke. Don't talk nonsense, they are definitely not our S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Coulson took a deep breath and said. Who are you, which force do you belong to, and when did you sneak in? Coulson remained calm and questioned. Stop talking nonsense. You are our hostages now. If you don't want to die, just shut up. One of the robbers threatened, keeping his gun pointed at Tony Stark's head. Because Tony took off his helmet after getting on the plane. At this time, he had not yet developed nanotechnology, and the armor was disassembled in the traditional way. No matter how powerful his armor is, if his head is exposed, it will be fatal. What's more, he doesn't have enough battery now. Shit, how does that braised egg take care of his own people? He doesn't even know if he has a mole. Tony didn't look very good and started racking his brains to think about how to deal with this kind of thing. It was not only Tony's side that encountered the hijacking, but also Natasha's side. Most of the agents who followed Natasha out to deal with the evil statue were traitors and had already controlled the Quinjet to fly elsewhere. Some SHIELD agents tried to resist, but were shot instantly. Don't move, Ms. Black Widow, otherwise, you'll have a hole in your pretty face. One of the robbers pointed his gun directly and blatantly at Natasha's face and threatened her. Who sent you? You actually sneaked into our SHIELD without knowing it. Could it be that you are the remnants of Hydra? Natasha didn't panic at all in this situation, but calmly analyzed the other party's origins. As expected of the famous agent Natasha, her psychological quality is not something to be underestimated. It's a pity that I won't tell you anything. After the other party finished speaking with a sneer, he snatched the Terra mask from Natasha's hand. Then he asked his robbers to stare at Natasha and other agents, then walked to the iron box holding the statue of the evil god and patted it hard. Can you tell me what is inside this? It can kill so many people without anyone looking at it. This is a very terrifying weapon. And your mask that summons soldiers, what is it? When did you owned? The robber shook Terra's mask with a curious look on his face, but he could see clearly that Natasha just put on the mask and summoned those shadow soldiers who were so powerful that even guns could not do anything to them. This is simply a mobile unlimited force. Natasha didn't speak, just looked at him silently. The surveillance systems of the two Quinjets had been cut off before the hijacking, so SHIELD couldn't see what was happening here. However, unable to stop the monitoring of the screen, Nick Fury now clearly sees the internal conditions of the two Quinjets through the screen. Shit. What's going on? Why do we have a mole in SHIELD? Nick Fury shouted angrily. Their SHIELD agents are elites selected through many layers, working hard to protect world peace. As a result, so many insiders suddenly appeared to hijack the plane. How is this going? As a seasoned veteran, Nick Fury immediately thought that there must be more than just these moles, and there must be some high-level officials of SHIELD, otherwise it would be impossible to hide the investigation and arrange for people to come in. Hill will immediately lead people to find these two fighter planes, rescue the people inside, capture these gang of moles, and torture them to find out who is behind them. Especially those two things, they must not be let go. Nick Fury immediately ordered. Hill immediately arranged manpower. Many agents looked confused, wondering how their director knew there was a mole, and what was he yelling at. At this time, various comments were already appearing on the screen. Warring states, what's going on? Your people rebelled. Nick Fury, it's not a rebellion, it's a mole from the beginning. It must be someone from some force who planted the mole. Bruce Wayne, that's troublesome. If something unexpected happens and we let those two containers go, we don't know how many casualties it will cause. Nick Fury, I know that. Zhu Xingtuan, sure enough, no matter how powerful the power is, it can't escape the problem of moles. Jiraiya, I know this very well. After all, this is the case in our ninja village. At this time in a villa. As a senior executive of SHIELD, Pierce is reading some information. There are some photos on it, and they are actually of the Weeping Angel, the evil god statue, the Death Star, the Terra mask, and Hawkeye's falling star style. Pierce's eyes couldn't help but stare at these strange abilities. Where did this come from? Why haven't I heard of it? But it's really interesting. If these things can be used by our Hydra, it might be of great benefit. Pierce licked his lips as he spoke. In the Marvel world, any major force will try their best to collect things beyond human imagination, and Hydra is no exception. So after he got the information from SHIELD's traitor, he organized this hijacking to get the evil god statue, the Death Star and the Mask of Terra, and study it carefully to see if he could gain any benefits for Hydra. At this time, Natasha was on the Quinjet. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Except for Natasha, the other agents dared not move, and even dared not blink. Only an experienced person like Natasha could remain calm. Can you tell me how to use this mask? Can I summon those ninja soldiers just by wearing it? Is there any spell? After the robber finished speaking, he put the Terra mask on his face, hoping that he could also summon those powerful shadow soldiers. Hee. However, Natasha sneered at this. Sorry, whether the mask is in my hand or not, the real owner is still me. Natasha had just finished speaking, and the other party had not reacted yet. A shadow soldier suddenly drilled out from the gap in the cage and instantly pressed him to the ground and subdued him. Not only him, at the same time, shadows emerged from the shadows under the feet of some robbers. While they were not reacting, they directly clawed over and broke the arms holding guns, making them fish to be slaughtered. How is that possible? Don't you use the mask to activate your abilities? The robber, who was still wearing the Terra mask, looked at Natasha in disbelief. Sorry, the mask belongs to me. It won't work no matter who wears it. And I have already summoned some soldiers through the mask to serve as my secret guards to prevent this situation. Natasha squatted in front of the other party and asked coldly, now can you tell me who sent you here? The robber didn't say anything after hearing Natasha's words. Natasha immediately took off the Terra mask and saw that the other party was dead and looked like he was poisoned. Apparently he had hidden poison capsules in his teeth, and if he couldn't escape, he would bite the poison and commit suicide. Not only this person, but other robbers have also committed suicide to prevent themselves from falling into the hands of the enemy and being tortured for information. Well, seeing this, Natasha sighed helplessly, and then took out her walkie-talkie to contact Nick Fury. Fury, I have the situation under control, but the robber is dead. That's good. As long as you are fine, bring those bodies back and analyze them carefully to find some clues. Nick Fury was relieved to see Natasha had the situation under control, and then asked about the statue. Don't worry, I have the statue of the evil god. Natasha was about to say that her shadow soldiers were looking at the statue of the evil god, but something suddenly occurred to her, and she immediately counted the number of shadow soldiers in the cabin. His expression had to change. Then she immediately ran to the iron box, opened the door and went in to take a look. Her face suddenly became particularly ugly. There are no statues here. There is absolutely nothing. Didn't I tell you to stare at the statue? Why did they all run out? Natasha turned around and stared at these shadow soldiers in displeasure and shouted. She never expected that all these soldiers would run out and forget their instructions. After hearing Natasha's reprimand, the shadow soldiers lowered their heads in shame. Concerned with protecting their master's safety, they forgot this order. Sorry Fury, the statue of the evil god is missing. Natasha reported this problem to Nick Fury seriously. I already knew that and now it's in the news. Over at S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury watched the live news on the computer with a heavy expression. Dear viewers, I can't believe the scene in front of me. The statue that was taken away by a group of people just appeared suddenly. I don't know how it did it. It was able to move on its own and kill one person after another. Now the statue doesn't know where to go. Where is it? There are only corpses on the ground. Through the live broadcast, you can see many corpses lying on the roads and sidewalks, each of them looking like they died of myocardial infarction. This horrific scene instantly made many people feel extremely frightened. Some extremist religious elements have begun to take this opportunity to cause trouble. This is God's sanction against us. He is very dissatisfied with us and wants to purify the world. What we should do now is kneel down and pray, offer our sincerity in exchange for God's forgiveness. And I am the messenger of God. As long as you give me enough tribute, I am willing to negotiate with the gods on your behalf and ask for your forgiveness. This kind of nonsense remarks are endless, and they sound full of flaws. But now there is such a terrifying statue of an evil god causing trouble there, so many people choose to believe this nonsense, donate their property, and pray for God's forgiveness. Now the evil god statue is constantly hunting down those who have seen him before. As long as there is a site covering it, it can stop its actions. However, people were frightened and did not understand this terrible statue. They thought that if they got close to it, they would die. They just ran away and dared not stare at it. This creates a scene where the evil god statue runs rampant and kills wantonly everywhere. Natasha, stop the statue immediately. No more victims can be added. Nick Fury looked at the tragic scene on the screen, his eyebrows furrowed so tightly that they were about to twist together. Director, the council called to ask about our strategy. Hill ran over with the phone and said. Just tell them to shut up, and what's going on with Stark? Nick Fury then thought of Tony Stark. In his opinion, it was impossible for this man who escaped from terrorists and built a super suit to be unable to do anything. At this time, Tony was in a state of being robbed and pointed at. He had already seen the situation on the screen. He was also very anxious, but he had to calmly deal with the matter in front of him. Oh, which force are you from? Is the hijacking for my money? Please give me a price. Tony said calmly. Stark, your conditions are indeed good, but we want more than just money. If you want to survive, you have no choice but to hand over your technology. One of the robbers pointed at Tony's Mark suit and said. I have many techniques. You are talking about bed techniques. Do you want me to demonstrate them to you with your woman? Tony interrupted, pretending not to know what the other person was talking about. Stop talking nonsense to me. However, the other party seemed really irritated and almost wanted to pull the trigger. Well, I want to remind you one thing. You'd better stand firm now. At this time Tony suddenly said this. The next second, the Quinjet suddenly tilted without the control of the pilot. Causes everything to lose balance instantly and fall to the side. Only Tony's armor immediately sprayed power to maintain balance, and he quickly reached out to catch Coulson who was about to fly out. Sir, the Quinjet is under my control. Jarvis's voice reached Tony's ears. It turns out that Tony had already asked Jarvis to invade the Quinjet's system and seize control. Although the Quinjet fighter system is very advanced, it is a piece of cake in front of Jarvis. Well done. Tony praised, threw Coulson aside, and immediately rushed towards the robbers who had not yet stood firm. First, he knocked out several people with the weight of the armor, and then the cannon in his palm burst out with dazzling light, directly taking away the eyesight of these people. Let them fall down with their eyes covered in pain. Then he knocked them out one by one. This is my gift to the one-eyed man. After subduing the robbers, Tony looked at the screen and immediately ordered Jarvis to control the Quinjet to fly towards the location of the evil god statue. That said, it was very difficult. The evil god statue was killed one by one in the order in which it was seen. No matter how far apart different targets were, they were strictly set in accordance with this abnormality. After all, for it was all a matter of teleportation. The crowd was scattered at the beginning, which resulted in a large range of movement for the evil god to be offline, making it difficult to track. But it was impossible to wait until it had killed all the robbers and stopped before finding it, which made everyone very worried. Ancient One. In 2 minutes, this statue will appear in front of a pizza shop in District 24 of Brooklyn Street. You can ambush it. Just when Tony and others were at a loss, Ancient One actually predicted the location where the evil god statue would appear. It turned out that Ancient One had already used the time stone to observe the future and found out the specific location and time of the appearance of the evil god statue. Combined with the location of Tony and Natasha, it gave this a high chance of success. Nick Fury. What? How do you know? Can you predict the future? Ancient One. It's true, but that's not important. Hurry up and ambush is what you should do. Tony Stark. Is this what you call magic? Predicting the future like a magician. Mordo. Foolish man, watch your words. Ancient One. You don't have to believe it, just wait for the results to appear. Tony Stark. Although Tony didn't want to believe this kind of thing, but the situation was serious now, and a dead horse was a living horse doctor, he still ordered Jarvis to fly towards Brooklyn at full speed. At the speed of the Quinjet, this comes quickly. Natasha also rushed over immediately. 1 minute and 30 seconds later, 2 planes arrived over this area at the same time. Tony didn't wait for landing and flew down directly against the armor. Standing in front of the pizza place. I want to see if what this magician says is true or false. Tony stared at the door of the pizza shop, waiting for the results to appear. Sir, it's been 2 minutes. By this time Jarvis had finished timing. At the same time, a customer came out of the store. At this moment, the evil god statue appeared out of thin air and pressed him underneath. This man died of myocardial infarction in an instant without even a chance to struggle. What? Seeing the statue of the evil god really appear, Tony Stark had to widen his eyes in shock. That Ancient One can actually predict the future. Seeing that Ji Yuyi's prediction came true, a lot of information appeared on the screen. Strange. It's so amazing. Is this the magic of Master Ancient One? Modu. Now you understand, Master Ji Yuyi's magic is unpredictable. Luffy. That's amazing. You can actually predict the future. Sun Wukong. It's the same as the fortune teller's prediction of the future. It also uses a crystal ball to predict the future. Ancient One. The prediction of the future I use is not that low-level magic. Jiraiya. It's so powerful. If I had this trick, I could avoid a lot of things. Ancient One. Some things are better not to be avoided. Knowing too much about the future and intervening will only create a different future. However, some of those futures may make things worse. Akainu. If nothing else, predicting that terrible pirates will appear in the future and eliminating them before they grow up is the best result. Fengyuan. It does make sense. My world is full of monsters. It would be a good thing if we could know the appearance of monsters and disaster situations in advance. Ancient One. I won't comment on this. Ji Yuyi didn't say anything but looked at the screen. At this time, she noticed that something was wrong with the statue of the evil god. Stark. By this time Natasha had landed and came running anxiously. Hey, beauty, you forgot your stuff, I'll give it back to you, can you go on a date with me? Tony did not forget to tease Natasha in this situation. Don't do this, I hope nothing happened to you. Natasha couldn't help but roll her eyes after hearing this. Don't worry, the dog is sleeping obediently. Tony replied with a smile. Then continued to stare at the statue of the evil god. How about I take over, so I can get a share of the reward? It's a beautiful thought. Natasha immediately refused. She needed a powerful reward even more, so she immediately approached the statue of the evil god. Crack, click, click. At this moment, cracks suddenly appeared on the surface of the evil god statue. Moreover, this pile of cracks seems to have the ability to reproduce itself and continues to spread. What happened? Seeing this scene, Natasha stopped in shock. Why did the statue that looked so good cracked on its own? You didn't hit yourself, did you? Tony couldn't help but speculate. Ancient One. You too, leave quickly. At this moment, Ji Yuyi seemed to know something and immediately issued a barrage warning. However, before they could see it, the statue of the evil god with cracks all over it suddenly exploded, and then a huge black mist spread like a storm. Tony's expression changed drastically when he saw this. He quickly grabbed Natasha, sprayed energy from his chest, and flew backwards away from the range of the black mist. The black mist spread over a large area. Not only the pizza shop behind it was involved, but also nearby shops and streets. After the black mist continued to spread for a while, it suddenly shrank to the middle. The black mist shrinks crazily in the direction of the statue's crack. Then look at the area previously covered by black mist. People there died violently. At a rough calculation, there were at least several thousand people. Seeing so many corpses piled up there, both Natasha and Tony looked particularly ugly. Woo! At this time, a strange sound came from the black mist. It sounded like talking, but it was not a sentence at all. Finally. Well, is this human language? Then a deep, thick and eerie sound came from the compressed black mist. Then the black mist suddenly rose. A huge creature with a dark body slowly walked out. This creature is more than 10 meters tall. Its body is pitch black. It resembles a humanoid with 2 legs, its body is extremely thin, and its facial features are hideous and terrifying. This looks particularly like the image of a demon in a religious painting. Demon. Tony had to pronounce these 2 words when he saw such a terrifying monster. His voice was obviously very soft, but it was heard by the other party. Devil. No, I am a god. The god who dominates you. The evil god made a violent sound, and his words were extremely powerful, causing Tony and Natasha to fall down in discomfort. After spending so many years, experiencing the destruction of the universe, killing countless people, and harvesting countless souls, I finally broke through the seal and escaped. I will establish my kingdom on this land, restore my strength to its peak, and let my name spread throughout the universe. As the evil god spoke, he continued to emit extremely powerful power fluctuations. The mere fluctuation caused the surrounding ground to shake continuously, and the buildings began to crack and collapse. The people who saw it in the distance were so frightened that they ran away quickly without forgetting to take pictures. This scene was seen by everyone through the screen. This sudden change shocked them. Naruto. No. What's going on? Why did the statue become like this? Star clusters. Could this be the true body? The statue is just a container to trap this thing. Odin. That's true. Gods are difficult to kill and can only be sealed. The statue is the container for sealing this evil god. It's just that it can't be completely sealed, which is why the flaw of killing people based on sight appears. It gives it a chance to harvest souls and accumulate them. The power to break the seal. As a god, Odin himself understands this kind of thing quite well, not to mention that he himself sealed his daughter. Odin's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a bit of murderous intent. Although he had left it alone for many years, the Atrium was still Asgard's territory, and other gods could not be allowed to mess around, even from other universes. Lord Odin, are we going to the Atrium now? Frigga came over and asked. Odin was just about to rush to the earth to deal with the evil god, but suddenly thought of something. I don't think so. There is a guy who is more difficult than me on earth. Odin immediately thought of the Ancient One. With the Ancient One, he didn't need to appear. At this time, people in various universes were extremely shocked. They didn't expect things to be so dramatic. Chopper. What is this? Why did the statue become this? Luffy. Brook. That thing looks like you. Brook. Hey. Is it my relative? How is that possible? Jiraiya. Has the seal been broken? Diana. It looks like this. This evil god statue is actually the container of the seal. The statue absorbs enough life and has the ability to break the seal. Bruce Wayne. You even know this, it's really not simple. Diana. Now is not the time to talk about this. Piccolo. Then those two people are dead now. Feng Yuan. No way, what should we do? Zhang Guo. Isn't there a god named Odin in the Marvel Universe? If he takes action, he should be able to deal with it. Zhu Xingtuan. That's not necessarily true. After all, he has no obligation to take action. Odin. Tony and Natasha's faces were as ugly as they could be at this time. They never thought that they would encounter such a thing. The evil god breaking the seal can only be seen in the story, but they didn't expect to see a real performance. I suddenly feel that the seal breaking in those movies before is more impactful. Tony suddenly said this. Now is not the time to joke. Natasha's face was particularly serious, and she clenched her fists tightly to cover her sweaty hands. Sir, the energy of this unknown creature is very strong. Even the Mark armor in its prime can't handle it. Jarvis immediately reminded Tony. I can see it. Tony didn't need Jarvis to say this, he could feel it and couldn't help but feel under great pressure. Is this also Earth? It's different from the Earth I've seen. It's more backward and there are no annoying fools. The evil god looked at the surrounding buildings and sneered. Tony and Natasha raised their eyebrows after hearing this. This must be the shelter. You are honored to witness the scene of my resurrection, and I can see that your performance is quite outstanding. As long as you are willing to become my first batch of loyal believers, I will give you unimaginable power and wealth. The evil god stared at Tony and Natasha and asked them to be his believers. Sorry, I never join any weird religions, and I'm richer than you. Do you have money to give me? Can the money you brought from other universes be used? However, Tony was still able to tease the evil god in this situation. After hearing what Tony said, the evil god's eyelids drooped, and the air around him instantly became colder. You should know that you are not qualified to stand in front of me and talk. The evil god stared at Tony, his tone full of sinister murderous intent. It made Tony tremble all over, and even though the armor had warming measures, he still felt the cold entering his body. Yes, you should be in the museum, and I'm not in the mood to go to that kind of place. As soon as Tony finished speaking, the evil god's eyes widened, and an invisible impact hit Tony's body, knocking him out. It stopped after hitting the restaurant more than 20 meters away. Sir, the armor is more than 90% damaged and can no longer fight. Jarvis hurriedly reported the situation of the armor. Ah, I can feel it. Tony saw electric sparks appearing around him, and the situation was really bad. When Natasha saw Tony being knocked out, her eyes had to be enlarged to the limit. She couldn't see what was going on at all. At this time, there was a lot of black fog shrouding the surroundings. The image of the evil god looked even taller. The evil god, like a little giant, stood in front of Natasha, staring at her condescendingly. So what's your answer? Faced with the evil god's question, Natasha was speechless all of a sudden. She felt that her throat was pinched by a hand and she couldn't make a sound. And her whole body was ravaged by terrible cold air, shaking uncontrollably. The fear that she had forgotten for a long time occupied her heart. At this moment, she felt that humans were particularly small. Natasha slowly squatted down as if she wanted to kneel down. As a result, when her knees were about to touch the ground, she immediately took out the Zora mask and put it on her face. A large number of black shadow ninjas appeared behind the evil god and rushed towards it one after another, waving their claws to attack. However, before the black shadow soldiers' claws could touch the evil god's body, they were fixed in midair by a mysterious force and could not move. Then they were crushed and turned into black smoke and drifted away. Life formed by shadows, quite interesting. I underestimated you, a woman, but it also angered me. After the evil god finished speaking, he took out a dark tentacle from under his body and instantly wrapped around Natasha. Just a slight tightening made Natasha scream in pain. Her bones were now making a crackling sound, as if they would break at any time. Swish. At this moment, a dazzling mechanism shot out, along with some small missiles. Just when he was about to hit the evil god just glanced at it, and they all self-destructed together. Then Tony, who was in a launching position in the distance, flew over uncontrollably, leaving no room for struggle. No matter which universe they are in, they are also annoying. Since they don't know what to do, then become my food. As soon as the evil god's voice fell, the black mist that had appeared before appeared on his body. This made Tony and Natasha unable to control their fear and their eyes widened. They saw with their own eyes what happened to the people covered in this mist. But even if he knew, so what, there was no room for resistance. Others couldn't help but feel their hearts in their throats when they saw this scene on the screen. Some people didn't dare to see what would happen next. Among them, the one with the ugliest face is Nick Fury. Natasha is his ace agent, Tony Stark, and an important target he wants to win over. He definitely didn't want them to die, so he kept yelling into the intercom to ask support troops to arrive quickly. It's just that he didn't think about what he could do even if he supported the troops, he just died blindly. Sorry, guest from another universe, I can't let you run rampant here. Just when the evil god's black mist was about to swallow Natasha and Tony, a soft female voice sounded, followed by a golden thunder and lightning. Boom! The golden lightning struck the evil god and blew it away. At the same time, the black mist was blown away, and Tony and Natasha were thrown away. Ahem, what's going on? Tony raised his head with confusion, wondering where the thunder and lightning came from. Hello, Stark, although this is your first time meeting me, I have seen you many times. At this time, a woman dressed in white with a bald head and a folding fan in her hand descended from the sky and looked at the two of them with a smile. Who are you? Why do you sound like a peeping Tom? Tony looked at the other person in confusion. We have talked about it a long time ago. My name is Ancient One. The visitor was none other than Ancient One. As someone who fought against the evil god from another dimension and protected the Earth, she naturally could not watch the evil god from another universe causing trouble here. Ancient One. You are the Ancient One who claims to be a magician on the screen. Natasha screamed in shock. We'll chat later. We need to get rid of this problem first. After Ji Yuyi finished speaking, he looked solemnly at the evil god who had already stood up. He had to look surprised. It's really not easy to be hit by Bossat's thunder without much damage. How dare you hurt me to death? The evil god roared angrily, his blood-red eyes glowed red, and then a life-killing black mist erupted from his body, spreading towards Ji Yuyi. Seeing this, Ji Yuyi clasped his hands together, opened the circle formation, and then pushed with both hands, bursting out a strong wind to fight against the black mist. He actually purified the black mist abruptly. Then she pushed harder, and the two circular formations merged into one, turning into a huge flame wheel approaching towards the evil god. Seeing this, the evil god opened his mouth and spit out a red light that hit the flame halo, forcefully blowing it up. Ignoring the fierce heat waves and sparks that spread, I waved my hands vigorously to disperse them. Many people couldn't help but be surprised when they saw these magic moves colliding. Luffy. Awesome. What kind of move is this? Nick Fury. Is this magic? Mordu. Yes, this is the power of Taj magic. Nobita. So handsome. Can I do it too? Modu. Well, I don't know what your magic book is like, but you should be able to study it hard. Nobita. Then I must study hard. Luffy. Can you teach me? I want to learn too. It looks like fun. Wong. Magic is not for fun. Sun Wukong. It looks different from the magic in our world. It's a bit interesting. Tsunade. It's a bit similar to ninjutsu's attribute changes. While everyone was discussing, Ji Yuyi and the evil god clashed several more times, each using wonderful magic methods. As expected of the evil god. He is really powerful. Ji Yuyi frowned and looked at the evil god opposite him. Although he did not use all his strength, the opponent was still able to do it with ease, and it seemed that he had not fully recovered to his peak. I don't know if it can compete with those extraterritorial evil gods in the complete era. Thaumaturgy user. There is thaumaturgy in this world too. The evil god looked at Ji Yuyi in surprise and shouted. But it doesn't seem to be your power. Your thaumaturgy seems to come from somewhere else. The evil god actually saw some clues and looked at Ji Yuyi. Thaumaturgy. Is that the name for magic in the world of containment? Ji Yuyi couldn't help but think of it when he heard this term, but he didn't pay much attention to it, but thought about how to get rid of this guy quickly. No matter who you are, don't try to stop me. After the evil god finished speaking, he erupted into a large amount of life-threatening black mist, and then rushed towards Ji Yuyi at the fastest speed, intending to launch a thunderous offensive. Sorry, this world does not belong to you. After speaking indifferently, Ancient One opened the Eye of Agamotto, and the light of the Time Stone emitted. Odin saw this scene through the screen and couldn't help but widen his eyes. Appeared. Ancient Yi's trump card. This made Odin's expression change drastically, he lost his demeanor, and couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. At this time, there was black mist all around Ji Yuyi, and the evil god was about to encounter him. Thank you for your resurrection, but you should turn back into a statue. That's what suits you. After speaking with a smirk, Ji Yuyi turned his hands. Then a time dial made of green light appeared out of thin air and enveloped the evil god. I saw the pointer on the dial rotating counterclockwise rapidly. But the evil god, who was originally so menacing, suddenly retreated. Whether it was the black mist or his movements, it was inevitable to retreat. And as the pointer moves back faster and faster, the appearance of the evil god also changed. His body began to shrink continuously, and black mist suddenly emitted from his body, spreading around, and then the black mist came back again. Then those people who were originally corpses were doing their own things as if nothing had happened. Finally, when the dial hands stopped, the evil god returned to his original statue form. It was as if nothing had happened. It turns out that you can't get rid of the shackles of time. That's easy. Seeing this, Ji Yuyi smiled evilly. But there is also an element of luck. Who knows how powerful this evil god was in his heyday? The Ancient One then turned to look at Tony Stark and Natasha. Now the two men looked at Ji Yuyi as if they had seen a ghost. However, not only the two of them, but also people in other universes could not control their expressions. Strange. Hey, what's going on? What was that just now? Why did the evil god turn into a statue and the dead came back to life? Wong. Is this the power of the Eye of Agamotto? It can control time. Bruce Wayne. I can control any time. How is this possible? Odin. It's possible if it's that magic weapon. This magic weapon is a very top-notch artifact that can control time. Sanji. What? You can even control time. This is too scary. Robin. This reminds me that I once saw a devil fruit in the Devil Fruit Illustrated book. It seems to be a time travel, but it can't be controlled. Warring states. Wait a minute, I just saw your time acting on that evil god. Why are those people resurrected too? Ancient One. This is the relationship between cause and effect. Those people died because of the evil god's resurrection. But I let the evil god's time go back to before the resurrection. When I kill a few more people, the cause and effect of the sacrifice due to the resurrection will disappear. Those people just come alive. Bruce Wayne. Cause and effect can be changed. This is really scary. Diana. Wouldn't that be invincible? No matter how powerful the enemy is, you can avoid it by going back in time. Quote. Ancient One. Ms. Diana, your idea is very good, but time is not easy to play with. Time involves cause and effect. If you play with it casually, there will be huge hidden dangers. Luffy. Huh. What do you mean? I don't understand. Doraemon. I think I understand. It's the butterfly effect. Changing the past at will may create a more troublesome future. Jiraiya. That's not necessarily true. If some things in the past can be changed, that would undoubtedly be a good thing. Doraemon. That's not necessarily the case. For example, if you spill a drink you always like to drink, you unfortunately want to turn back time and drink it. That would be good for you, but it is possible that the drink you spilled will just extinguish a small fire source, and if the fire source is not extinguished by the drink, it may expand the fire and form a fire. Quote. Nami. Is it so complicated? Doraemon. Of course, changes in the future are very difficult to control. What you think is good may be bad in a certain sense. Ancient One. Doraemon, thank you for your explanation. What you said makes sense. It seems that you are very experienced. Doraemon. This experience is correct. When I was in the robot school, the teacher talked about the seriousness of the problem of changing the past. And Nobita changed the past several times and caused trouble and made a mess. Nobita. Don't expose my shortcomings here. Tony Stark. Wait a minute, robot school. Robots still go to school. Doraemon. Yes, how else can I learn knowledge? Tony Stark. No. Wouldn't it be better if the robot's learning knowledge could be directly imported into the computer? Why go to school? Doraemon. Well, this is to get along better with humans and get in touch with the world. Only by working hard to learn knowledge and learning to think on your own can you become an excellent robot. Tony Stark. What? A good robot can only be called a robot by learning on its own. Tony Stark was overwhelmed by this thought and could not react at all. This simply subverted his cognition. Is this necessary? In Leo's world, Zu Hoshiden looked at the screen in shock. I didn't expect that humans in another universe could actually control time. This is too scary. The magic in their world is not so outrageous, and even the technology of the Kingdom of Light cannot do it. Sure enough, it should not be underestimated. If you can learn this ability to control magic. Zhu Xingtuan couldn't help but think like this, and then looked at the Red Sea disc in his pocket. In order to prevent accidents, he decided to carry it with him. It's better not to. Zhu Hoshiden quickly gave up this idea to avoid something more terrible. One Piece World. Sengoku looked at the screen with twinkling eyes. If you can turn back time, if you have this trick, even if you encounter Whitebeard, you can directly turn him into a baby. The Warring States period felt that this kind of power was of great strategic value, but unfortunately they couldn't get it here. But he had seen Robin mention that there was a time-traveling fruit recorded in the Devil Fruit illustrated book. Is there anyone who can control time? So he decided to investigate carefully. Naruto World. Jiraiya looked at Ancient One's Eye of Agamotto on the screen and couldn't help but want to get this treasure. If you have this, you can revive Minato. As for resurrecting Minato, he didn't care what impact it would have. This was not just for myself, but also for Naruto. DC Universe. Bruce Wayne couldn't help but think of the tragic death of his parents and the consequences of that alley. He wanted to change it all the time, and now he saw a way. It's a pity that they are not the same universe. If I can get it, no matter what the cause and effect is. Bruce Wayne couldn't help but clench his fists. Marvel Universe. Ancient One opened the portal and threw the statue of the evil god to Kamatage on the opposite side. I guess that opposite side is your base. Natasha reacted immediately and asked. Yes, do you want to be an undercover agent? Ji Yuyi looked at Natasha with a smile, which immediately made Natasha feel guilty. She didn't dare to anger a big boss who could control time. This statue is too dangerous, so leave it to our mages for safekeeping. This is what we often do. Ancient One said with a smile. There was no doubt in his tone, and Tony could only shrug helplessly. How dare he say anything? Start distributing rewards now. Just then the sound from the screen came. The eyes of the three people present were brightened. Congratulations to the Marvel Universe for successfully containing the evil god statue and the Death Star. Now rewards will be distributed to the Ancient One, Tony Stark and Natasha. Reward the Ancient One Mage with an independent magic source. Reward Tony Stark with the Void Engine. Reward Natasha, 300 grams of CPH-4. When the screen sound ends, an energy light ball appeared in front of Ji Yuyi. When she saw this ball of light, Ji Yuyi had to open her eyes wide. She felt an extremely powerful magical energy from it, far exceeding her own. But there was so much information in Tony's mind that he suddenly felt a headache and had to hold his head. The Void Engine starts to activate, binds the host, Tony Stark, and locks the secondary biological dark plane. Additional functions: reading of dark energy, gene pool of a generation of super soldiers, definition of primary matter, rewriting of primary concepts. Then a lot of unfamiliar words appeared in Tony's mind, which made him even more headache, and he had no idea what they were. On the contrary, Natasha was relatively calm, looking at the sudden extra blue pellets in the packaging bag with a puzzled look on her face. What kind of medicine is this? Natasha looked at CPH-4 with a puzzled look. She had never heard of such a thing. The independent magic source contains huge magic energy inside, and is specially used for magicians to practice. Once placed in a location, a unique magic source will be formed in that area, and a connection will be established, no matter how far apart it is. You can get the power of the magic source and cast magic. And the magic power will not be exhausted. It will continuously regenerate automatically, thus avoiding the problem of depletion. The screen begins explaining what these rewards do. After hearing the effect of the independent magic source, Ji Yuyi first showed surprise, and then couldn't help showing surprise. She knows the role of magic sources better than anyone else. The magic power of Karma-Taja's magician was not obtained by practicing on his own. If he were cultivating by himself, he would be just a magic apprentice. Therefore, in order to increase their strength as quickly as possible, the magicians of Karma-Taj will make a contract with Emperor Weishan and borrow his magic power. Ji Yuyi himself signed contracts with several demon gods from other dimensions and obtained the power of many demon gods to achieve his current strength. However, although this method improves quickly, it comes at a cost. If you use the power of the devil a certain number of times, your body will develop some serious problems. You will be chased by nightmares while sleeping, your tongue will lose its sense of taste, and you will suffer from various diseases that cannot be cured, etc. Any one of them will cause a lifetime of pain. Even Emperor Weishan, the ancestor of Karma-Taj, would take the price mercilessly, but at most it would be less serious than other demon gods. However, there will be a time when the price cannot be tolerated. Once Ji Yuyi cannot bear the price of contracting the power of the demon god in the future, then she will be finished. Therefore, she has been trying her best to only deal with enemies with melee combat, and try not to use magic. Even if she uses it, it is free of charge elemental magic. But now this problem that has been bothering Ji Yuyi seems to be solved. What is a void engine again? Tony couldn't wait to ask. There was a lot of knowledge in his mind, each of which was enough to make him, a scientist, stunned. The Void Engine is a computer-like device from a certain universe called Super God. It transforms the universe through coding. If the user has a higher level of knowledge and stronger coding ability, he can analyze everything in the world and make many transcendences. Things like human cognition, distortion of matter, space teleportation, modification of other people's cognition, etc., have infinite possibilities. After hearing the explanation on the screen, Tony had to open his eyes wide. It was terrible that this could actually change the world. Then he couldn't help showing a look of ecstasy. As the most outstanding scientist, he immediately accepted this extraordinary thing. Based on knowledge and cognition, we use coding to transform the world. This is simply a reward tailor-made for him. Tony asks himself that he is definitely the best scientist and programmer in the world. With this, his fantastic ideas can definitely be realized. Maybe this will allow me to make plasma light cannons, giant machines, and technology from the world of Doraemon. Tony couldn't help but think this way. CPH-4 is a special drug from a certain universe. If inhaled, it can develop 30% of the brain's potential and stimulate various abilities beyond human limits. Originally, after taking this drug, there is a risk of physical collapse. But the rewards given out can negate this side effect. After hearing the explanation on the screen, Natasha had to show surprise. Does that mean this is a medicine that can gain superpowers? What? How is it possible to develop 30% of the brain's potential? Tony Stark next to him immediately screamed in shock, and even Ancient One was a little uneasy. Even the most famous Einstein could only develop his brain to 10%. If it were developed to 30%, his intelligence would not be described as a genius, but he would not be considered a human being. As a scientist himself, Tony Stark understands the importance of brain development. For most people, it would be good if it can develop to 5%, but this drug can actually develop to 30%. This is terrible. What would it be like for people on Earth with 30% brain development? After listening to Tony's words, Natasha couldn't help but take a deep breath. Then this CPH4 is indeed quite scary. What would happen if she took it directly? Natasha had to hesitate a little, worried that she would really become less human. But when she thought of the terrifying evil god just now and the various terrifying contained objects that appeared on the screen, her heart was filled with fear. I thought that as a top agent, I could handle most crises. But after seeing the strength of those terrifying contained objects, she realized that she was particularly small, especially when she felt that death was so close just now, she really had no ability to resist. Fight. Natasha took a deep breath and took CPH4 without hesitation. Ji Yuyi and Tony, who were standing next to them, saw Natasha being so decisive and had no time to persuade her. They could only watch her eat it. No one knew what would happen next. Ooh. The next second, Natasha immediately covered her head in pain and squatted down. Finally, she put her hands on the ground. Her whole body was shaking and sweating like a fire burning in her body. Hey. Are you okay? Seeing Natasha in such pain, Tony quickly stepped forward to show concern. He wanted to do something but didn't know what to do. By the way, let's take the opportunity to try the Void Engine, EH. Is that how it's called? Tony mobilized the Void Engine according to the knowledge in his mind, and quickly got started with his wisdom. Import host data, Tony Stark. Start activating the Void Engine. Currently, the Genetic Warrior System, Dark Plane System, Micro Wormhole Algorithm, and Advanced Cosmic Computing have been introduced. Calculate frame number 8. Now begin parsing the object, Natasha Romanov. 20% analysis, 40% analysis, 70% analysis, 100% analysis. This goal is accelerating brain development, and more than 20 billion brain neurons have been detected to start mobilizing, and they are in the process of evolution. What? Evolution? Is this the result of 30% development? After hearing the report from the Void Engine, Tony showed a look of surprise. This made him curious about what Natasha would become. Ooh. After a while, Natasha stopped twitching and started panting. Hey, are you okay? Tony asked worriedly. The next second, Natasha's body suddenly bounced up as if paralyzed, jumped over a very high position, and then landed gently on the ground. This scene made Tony and Ji Yuyi next to them look stunned. I saw Natasha looking at Tony and Ji Yuyi, and then suddenly said, Stark, the blood vessels in your head have been squirming. You must not have slept for a long time, and it has been 72 hours. If you don't sleep, your blood vessels will burst sooner or later. Ah. Tony had to be stunned after hearing this. Jarvis had told him this, but he had never taken it seriously, thinking that there were still many things to do, so he stayed away from sleep for the time being. But how did Natasha see it? Then Natasha spoke to Ji Yuyi. Also, your body seems to have more serious problems than I imagined. Your sleep quality is very poor, you have some serious gastrointestinal problems, and there are some other things. But for privacy reasons, I won't say any more. After hearing this, Ji Yuyi's eyes had to change. Is it difficult to say that all the backlash problems she has encountered have been seen? Have you awakened any superpower? Ancient One asked. It's not that I feel that my facial features have been strengthened a lot. My brain processes information very fast. I can discover the deep connotation based on superficial phenomena. When Natasha was talking, her whole body suddenly shook like sand. Tony noticed this scene and couldn't help but rub his eyes hard, thinking it was because he was dazzled. But when he moved his hand away, He saw that Natasha's whole body was broken down into particles like sand, and then mixed together again, and finally turned into the appearance of Tony Stark. Hey 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 hey. Seeing Natasha become like him, Tony had to scream as if he had seen a ghost. Then Natasha transformed into the Ancient One, and then back to herself. How is this going? Tony asked quickly, feeling like his mind was going to explode. I feel like I can manipulate every molecule in my body and rearrange it. Natasha said this. In her eyes, her body was just a pile of countless molecules, and she could use it to reconstruct it however she wanted. Hearing this, Tony and Ji Yi had to be stunned. Don't talk to me yet. I feel like there's a lot of information in my head right now. Please tell me to slow down. Natasha said this while covering her head. Now her 5 senses are extremely amazing, and she can receive a lot of information at once. Although she can process it all very quickly, she still can't get used to it. Then Natasha suddenly swept her hand away, and a car next to her suddenly flew up out of thin air. Then she waved her hand and threw the car away. Control with your mind. No, it's a bit like controlling gravity. Ji Yi's pupils dilated slightly when he saw this. Dee dee dee. At this time Natasha's phone rang, and she immediately picked up the phone. But instead of connecting directly, he swiped 2 fingers on the phone. Then she saw a line of text appear out of thin air on her phone. The caller is Nick Fury. Now in Natasha's eyes, there were countless electromagnetic waves emitting from the mobile phone. She looked around again, and there were electromagnetic waves of different colors everywhere. Hello. What are you doing? Tony couldn't see Natasha's movements and had to ask, when his cell phone also rang. I can directly see electromagnetic waves, and through the electromagnetic waves I can see the information sent by the communication equipment and the origin of the caller. After Natasha finished speaking, a line of radio waves slid down on Tony's cell phone. Then she saw the caller, Pepper, and a bunch of spam messages. It's your little secretary who's calling, please answer it right away. You also have a lot of spam text messages, including all kinds of interesting ones. After Natasha finished speaking, she answered the phone. Tony was left in a mess and was so frightened that he quickly checked his phone to see if it was what Natasha said. Romanov, you now. Fury, don't talk yet. When Nick Fury was about to care about Natasha's situation, Natasha suddenly interrupted Nick Fury. This left Nick Fury confused. I can see what's going on with S.H.I.E.L.D., again through your eyes. A S.H.I.E.L.D. situation suddenly appeared in Natasha's eyes, with agents busy everywhere. What? This made Nick Fury tremble and look around in confusion. I am now connected to your brainwaves through my mobile phone. I can see the situation of S.H.I.E.L.D. through you and read what you are thinking. Do you want me to tell you? Listening to Natasha's words, cold sweat broke out on Nick Fury's back. What kind of superpower is this? It connects to one's own brainwaves through a mobile phone, allows one to see the situation in S.H.I.E.L.D., and can also read minds. Coupled with the various superpowers that Natasha showed just now, Nick Fury was so shocked that he was almost shaking. Then comes ecstasy. No matter what, the stronger Natasha is, the greater the benefit to S.H.I.E.L.D. Natasha, no need to say so much, come back quickly. Nick Fury immediately urged Natasha to return to S.H.I.E.L.D. Learn. After Natasha hung up the phone, she looked at Tony who was a little messy next to her. I'm leaving first. By the way, there seems to be something wrong with your armor design. I advise you to change it. Then Natasha actually revealed the details of Mark's armor. This was something Tony didn't notice, and it made his scalp tingle. Is this the power to develop 30% of the brain? Not to mention being the most genius, but also possessing so many superpowers, do humans actually have such great potential? Also shocked was Ancient One. She thought she was already at the pinnacle of humanity, but when she saw Natasha's performance, she found it difficult to calm down. Does the human brain still hide so many secrets? Or is it only possible with the drug just now? Ji Yi analyzed it this way. Tony looked at her after hearing this. See you later, Stark. After the Ancient One finished speaking, he opened the portal and returned to Karmataj. Do women nowadays have superpowers? Tony said this without any end and then looked at Natasha who was getting on the plane. TCH, even if you develop 30% of your brain, I'm the top genius and I can definitely do it. Tony immediately returned to his conceited thoughts. When he wanted to fly towards the Quinjet, he remembered that the power was out and could only drag the heavy suit towards the Quinjet. Fortunately, Natasha didn't want to wait for Tony for too long, so with a thought, she released a wave of energy that enveloped Tony and pulled him onto the fighter plane. Yeah, Romanov, the pilots are dead, we should. Coulson spoke timidly. Natasha now felt strange to him. Don't worry, let me do it, just control the electromagnetic waves. Natasha suddenly said this, and then her pupils dilated slightly. The Quinjet's control panel suddenly turned on its own, closed the hatch, and ignited to take off. There is obviously no one to control the machine, but it can fly normally. This made Coulson and Tony not know what to say, their faces were blank. As an aside, this screen missed one person's reward, it's James Rhodes. At this time, the sound of the screen suddenly sounded. This surprised Tony a little. Rhodes also got a reward. Ah, well, he did have a share of the credit for knocking out the Death Star with 1 foot. It's so funny that I can forget about this screen. Tony couldn't help but complained in his mind. Now James Rhodes' reward is reissued, the Crystal Vine missile launcher. In the universe of contained objects, there is such a kind of contained object called crystal vine, which is a huge crystal built into tree vines. It has a particularly terrifying anomaly, that is, it will automatically explode and scatter the fragments. Spread around. When the fragments of the crystal vine touch any material creature, they will assimilate the thing they touched into crystal. Then 2 hours later, they will explode again, spreading the fragments repeatedly, infecting more substances and assimilating into crystal. The hardness of the crystal vines is beyond imagination, and it is difficult to be destroyed by ordinary means. Even if it is successfully destroyed, the small fragments can assimilate other substances. Fortunately, the crystal vines cannot affect quartz, so the Containment Association used quartz to make a cage to trap all the crystal vines to prevent their spread. Subsequently, the Containment Association developed a crystal vine missile based on the characteristics of the crystal vine. After the missile hits the enemy, it will erupt into countless crystal vine fragments and assimilate the enemy. At the same time, a large amount of quartz material is released to control the spread of the crystal vine. After listening to the words on the screen, Tony Stark's eyes lit up. He has always been very interested in novel weapons. Now that I heard about it, how could I not have any thoughts about such an interesting weapon like the Jingman missile? Hey, can you go find Rhodes first? I'm very interested in his new weapon. Tony immediately requested. You can, but you have to do it quickly. Natasha didn't refuse. No problem, just let him fly over and make peace with us. After Tony finished speaking, he immediately took out his mobile phone and made a call. Hey, Rod, it's me. Tony. There was a strange sound in my ears just now. Then suddenly there was what looked like a multi-door micro-missile launcher at my feet. Before Tony could speak, Rhodes kept shouting anxiously. Apparently, the sound on the screen and the sudden appearance of the reward scared him. Hey, Rhodes, don't be nervous. I'm going to find you now, and I'll send you the location. You can take your weapon and fly to me in the air, and we'll go to S.H.I.E.L.D. to do some research. Tony immediately reassured Rod about the situation. After hearing this, Rhodes immediately agreed. After Tony finished the call, he looked at the screen. When he wasn't paying attention, the screen sent out a lot of messages. Bruce Wayne. Void Engine, World Algorithm. What is that? And how could that woman named Natasha awaken so many superpowers? Diana. It's really terrifying. You can change your body's appearance, intercept electromagnetic waves to view information, and read your brain through electromagnetic waves. You can do it even through equipment. This is simply not something that humans can do. Barton. Natasha actually has so many abilities. Just her ability to intercept information and read minds, basically there is no secret that the whole world can keep from her. Tony Stark. You have a lot of questions. Let me tell you one by one. First of all, the Void Engine is a coding program that analyzes the world. The deeper you analyze it, the more incredible things you can do. I will leave an Easter egg here. I will all tell you again. Tony Stark. As for the change in that woman, it was because she developed her brain to 30% and awakened her superpowers. Zhu Xingtuan. How can a human being have such powerful superpowers if his brain is developed to 30%? Naruto. What does 30% development mean? Tony Stark. Huh. Don't you know the mystery of the human brain? According to scientific research, the utilization rate of our human brain is actually only about 5%. The best scientists can only use 10% at most, and the rest most of them are asleep. Tony Stark. If the remaining potential of the brain can be further developed, human intelligence can be improved to unprecedented levels, and it is said that the more it is developed, the more it can evolve to a whole new field. Zoro. The brain utilization rate is less than 10%. No wonder I want to sleep all the time. Sanji. No, this has something to do with your people. Nobita. Is this true? No wonder I am so stupid, my brain must not be fully developed. Doraemon. I can't refute this. Warring states. Then what can we do to develop more brain potential? As long as we develop more, we can have more abilities and evolve into new fields like Ms. Natasha. Natasha. That's not necessarily true. I was able to get development because of the drug called CPH4. I don't know if the development of other methods can make it like me. Luffy. Then people in some of our worlds have developed powerful powers through training. Is this also because their brains have been developed? Bruce Wayne. That can't be counted. The most important feature of brain development is the improvement of intelligence. You are just training physical strength. Sun Wukong. Speaking of which, aren't the aliens' brains fully developed yet? Tony Stark. I don't know. I haven't even had the chance to study an alien's head. Warring states. No matter what, this is a plan that can be explored. In addition to that kind of drug, do you know any other ways to develop the potential of the brain? Tony Stark. First of all, we must understand the brain mobilization rate before development. In our world, we can use advanced instruments to analyze brain neurons from a microscopic perspective. It is said that the human brain has 80 billion neurons and synapses. It depends on the number of neurons. How much you work can tell how developed your brain is. Tony Stark. As for how to develop it, the currently feasible method is to use sound waves or electromagnetic waves to resonate with neurons and wake them up. Tony Stark speaks various professional words to explain brain development. Many people looked confused. After all, some people couldn't turn their heads and couldn't accept such complicated information at all. Luffy. I can't understand it at all. Tsunade. It's really complicated, 80 billion neurons. What is that, so many? And what are the microscopic devices? Jiraiya. I wonder if I can see it with the Rinnegan. Natasha. However, I advise you not to develop your brain's potential casually. This has side effects. Natasha's sudden words made everyone confused. Loki. Human lady, are you making up lies here to prevent people like you from appearing? Natasha. Huh, I'm not that boring. I just wanted to remind you. Natasha. First of all, the more the potential of the brain is developed, the more powerful the computing power will be, which will require more energy. The more it is developed, the more energy will be needed. If it is overdeveloped, the body will unable to withstand the brain's computing power, it collapsed first. Natasha. It's like an engine. Although the engine is the important heart of vehicles such as cars and ships, it needs coordination with other parts. If the engine performance is too high and other parts are old, then the car will not start before it starts. Parts will be burned by the engine. Natasha. The reason why I'm fine is because the medicine the screen gave me has avoided this problem, but I do feel that my nutritional energy is losing rapidly. At most, I will be very hungry, and it will not be life-threatening. Quote. After seeing Natasha's reminder, people in other worlds had to be stunned. They didn't expect that developing the brain would be so risky. Luffy. No wonder I can eat so much. I must have developed my brain to a high degree. Nami. I don't think it's the same thing at all. Sun Wukong. I also eat a lot. Piccolo. Don't talk nonsense, you have nothing to do with being smart. Akainu. Thanks for the reminder, but as long as it is beneficial to us, we have to carry out research. One Piece Universe, on a Navy ship. Akainu uses Den Den Mushi to contact Sengoku. Marshall, I feel that this research on brain potential is worth a try. Our Navy needs more power. Akainu clenched his fists and said. The superpowers that Natasha showed just now made him have to be amazed. Although he felt that he was not as good as himself, those abilities were enough to collect any intelligence in the world. And if more were developed, what kind of more abilities would there be? And what kind of impact would it have on the devil fruit? Akainu was very concerned. Indeed, maybe we need to ask Vegapunk for help. Sengoku nodded and agreed with Akainu's opinion. Now the world situation is unknown, and there is the so-called containment threat. The more means to improve combat power, the better. Speaking of which, this made Sengoku have to wonder if Vegapunk is so talented because of his powerful brain development. Maybe he has a way to further develop the human brain. As for the energy supply problem, he doesn't believe that their physical fitness will not be able to hold up. Naruto World. Tsunade and Jiraiya looked at each other. They also had some ideas about the potential development of the human brain. Can your Samsara eye see the so-called neurons? Tsunade asked. I have to try this. After Jiraiya finished speaking, he opened the Samsara eye. The Samsara eye originally has the ability of the white eye, so Jiraiya can also clearly see the structure of the human body, the distribution of nerves, etc. But it is a bit difficult to be precise to such a small position as neurons. Jiraiya had to concentrate more and enhance the observation level of the Samsara eye in order to see the so-called neurons. I seem to see something densely packed. At this time, Jiraiya saw that there were indeed many small dots on Tsunade's head, and most of them seemed dim, with only a few bright lights. Is this the brain neuron? There are really a lot of them. Jiraiya widened his eyes and moved closer to Tsunade's head to see it more clearly. Okay, don't get closer if you see it. As a result, Tsunade pushed Jiraiya away at this time. Her face was red. It turned out that Jiraiya was too close to Tsunade, which made her feel embarrassed. Doraemon World. After Nobita learned that the brain potential was so powerful, he immediately begged Doraemon to develop his brain potential. Doraemon. I also want to develop my brain potential. Help me, I want to become smarter. Nobita kept shaking Doraemon's body and begging. Don't make things difficult for me. Even in the 22nd century, brain potential is a difficult topic to overcome. I can't help you. Doraemon kept pushing Nobita away to dispel his idea. Leo Universe. Feng Yuan immediately found Zhu Xingtuan. Captain, what do you think about our brain development? I'm not sure about this. Zhu Xingtuan shook his head. Even the Kingdom of Light had not studied the brain potential. He was not very clear about the extent to which the brains of Earthlings and Ultraman were developed. Then should we try to study this field? Feng Yuan proposed this idea. Zhu Xingtuan shook his head after hearing this. Let's not study it for now. We don't have the special conditions for research. What's more, if something goes wrong, it will be troublesome. Let's talk about it later. Feng Yuan nodded after hearing this, thinking it made sense. At this time, in the Marvel world of Kamar Taj, after returning to Kamar Taj, Ancient One placed the statue of the evil god in the middle of the square. This statue cannot move unless someone is watching it, and the evil god inside will not run out. There are people coming and going in the square, and anyone can see it. Ancient One did not intend to seal the statue of the evil god directly and arrange someone to watch it. It would be better to let everyone supervise it together. But just in case, someone still has to watch it here. Strange suggested. Indeed, that's right. Ancient One would naturally not forget this, and designated some people to take turns to stand guard and check. Then he took out the magic source full of magic energy. Is this the independent magic source? Mordo shouted in shock when he saw the magic source in Ancient One's hand. He had never felt so much huge magic energy. Ancient One did not say anything, but threw the magic source into the air. The magic source did not fall down, but floated directly in the air. Buzz 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 buzz. Then the magic source emitted dazzling light and strange sound waves, and then huge magic energy burst out from it like a fountain. The next second, Kamar Taj was covered with dazzling colorful light. The ground kept shaking. The magic apprentices were frightened and tried to open their shields to protect themselves. However, this did not last long and soon returned to calm. Now the scenery of Kamar Taj has changed dramatically. The sky is full of colorful lasers, and there are light spots falling around, which looks particularly beautiful. What a huge magic energy! Wong looked around in disbelief. He could feel that even in the air, there were particularly rich magic particles. Seeing this, Ji Yuyi opened the circle and released a lightning bolt to smash a huge stone in the distance. What a powerful power! Modu said in surprise. In the past, if you want to condense lightning magic, you need more time to prepare. But now you can release it at will. Master Ancient One, we now have such a huge magical energy, so we don't need to make a contract with the demon god, we can use any magic directly. Wang said hurriedly, his face full of surprise. He knew many kinds of magic, but they all needed to be contracted with the demon god to do it. Once the contract was made, a price had to be paid, so Wang had never been able to learn some magic, and he always felt it was a pity. But now it seems that this problem can be overcome. Wang, you think too much. However, Ancient One suddenly said this, which made Wang stunned. We contract with the demon god, not only to get magic power, but also to use the magic of the demon god. The magic of different demon gods has different effects. If we only rely on the magic of Kamar Taj to cast magic, we cannot imitate the power of the demon god. Ancient One explained in detail. Then do we have to continue to contract the demon god? Modo next to him asked. We don't need to continue the contract for now. With the huge magic source here in our knowledge, we can develop magic that belongs to our Kamar Taj. As for the power of the demon god, it won't be too late to make a contract when we encounter an enemy that we can't resist in the future. Ancient One said this calmly. Everyone understood what Ancient One meant, and then they couldn't help showing their joy. Developing your own magic is very interesting. If it really succeeds, then everyone present will be the ancestor of magic. Even Ancient One couldn't help but smile at the thought of developing his own magic, free from the constraints of the devil, and paying the price. At this time, Ji Yuyi was slightly stunned. She heard a distant voice. Humph, did you notice it so quickly? Ji Yuyi said such a thing, and before everyone could react, he flew into the sky, left here, and returned to his room. Then Ji Yuyi sat down and entered a meditative state. So, you are afraid that I will never make a contract with you again. Ji Yuyi opened his mouth to speak. There was obviously no one else here, but he was talking to someone else. If you can see Ji Yuyi's meditation world, you will see that Ji Yuyi is in the vast starry sky. In front of her, there are three huge heads whose appearance and height cannot be seen clearly. There are men, women and even beast heads. These three are none other than the founder of Kamar Taj White Magic, the Trinity of Vishan Emperors. We already know that Kamar Taj has an independent source of magic. You can't just give up our contract like this. Yes, you can't cast too much magic just by relying on the magic source. When Ancient One listened to the words of the three supreme beings, he did not panic at all. Instead, he kept smiling and shaking his fan. Sorry, I will naturally not give up my contract with you, but I will use your magic as little as possible. When I find out that I can do the same magic without your power, I may use it for the rest of my life. Not on. After hearing Ji Yuyi's words, the three huge heads remained silent, not knowing what they were thinking. If they had heard this in the past, they would have thought it was nonsense, because magic requires magic energy, and there is not much magic energy on the earth today that can support overly powerful magic. That's why countless magicians seek contracts with the devil. But now Kamar Taj has an independent magic source, and the magic energy is so huge that it is not in a magic dimension. It is enough to allow Kamar Taj to become independent and no longer rely on the devil. This is something that cannot happen to Emperor Weishan. Because they still need to rely on the wizards of Kamar Taj to borrow their power, and finally pay the price, and their souls are returned to them to enhance their power. If they hadn't been unable to come to Earth, they would have come to trouble Ancient One a long time ago. We can talk about the cost. At this time, the man's head suddenly said this. Ji Yuyi smiled after hearing this. On the streets of Brooklyn at this time. Because of the Death Star and the evil god statue, many people died here. It was difficult for the police alone to maintain the investigation. Later, SHIELD agents took over the matter. Let things settle down here. And it just seems right. Xie Yun lives near here. Phew, you scared me, I almost got involved. Xie Yun looked out the window with lingering fear. The statue of the evil god appeared not far from him just now, which frightened him into thinking that he was finally going to fight for the first time since coming to the Marvel world. Fortunately, it was Ji Yuyi who finally took action to solve the problem. The containment objects, the evil god statue, the Death Star and the Red Sea disk were successfully contained. Now a reward will be given to the host Xie Yun. Just then Goldfinger's voice came. The host Xie Yun has gained the ability to freely travel through the Red Sea world. As long as he passes through a reflective object like a mirror, he can enter the Red Sea world. The death curse of the Death Star can curse the target, causing the target to die suddenly in a short period of time. If it is like a relative in crisis, you have to pay the price of your life to curse it. With the perception of the evil god statue, anyone who has seen it can sense its specific location. As Golden Finger continued to explain the functions of his abilities, Xie Yun felt that there was a lot more information in his mind, and his body seemed to be changing. What the hell are you waiting for? I was rewarded with 3 things this time. No matter how you look at the results, the death curse is of some use, and the others are not so good. Why should I go to the Red Sea world when I have nothing to do? There are still people I have seen, want me to track it. Xie Yun was quite dissatisfied with this reward. Especially traveling through the world of the Red Sea, he only went there after his brain was exhausted. No matter what, let him have the authority to call on the unclean. I really don't know how this Golden Finger is awarded. There are currently no contained objects invading the universe. The next invasion of contained objects will be in a week. The host is requested to edit and release it in a timely manner based on the materials provided by this system. After Goldfinger finished speaking, Xie Yun's computer had many more files. Huh. You asked me to rush to work so soon. Oh, let me rest for 2 days. Xie Yun, a social worker, immediately refused this request to work overtime to catch up on work. Anyway, there was still a week left, so he would rest for 2 days. So he simply lay down on the bed and fell asleep. At this time, electronic sounds also appeared on the screens in each universe. The containment prediction is now over. The next prediction will be in a week. See you there then. After the electronic voice finished speaking, the screen that had been unable to get rid of disappeared in an instant, and no one could react. On board the Quinjet, Tony Stark mused. In a week. I don't know what the containment objects will be. A lot of research and development must be completed as soon as possible. Sir, Colonel Rhodes, approaching. Jarvis reminded Tony of this. Okay. After Tony finished speaking, he called Natasha, and the Quinjet stopped in the air and opened the hatch, letting Rhodes in. In Asgard at this time, Odin is testing the power of Odin's tabard. He is constantly attacking Odin's shirt with the spear of Odin. He asked himself that his weapon, Odin's gun, was the most powerful weapon. Most things in the universe could never stop his gun. But when he met Odin's jersey, his confidence was immediately broken. No matter how much force Odin uses to attack Odin's shirt, there is no chance of even a single crack appearing on the surface of Odin's shirt. It's really terrifying that the artifact is so hard. Odin stroked Odin's shirt in shock, without even a hint of heat from the attack. He looked at the Belmont Divine Sword next to him. He had tested the power of this sword. It was very terrifying. No matter in Asgard could withstand it. This made Odin have to think that even if he put on the destroyer armor and attacked Odin's shirt with all his strength, he would not be able to cause any useful damage. The last time this feeling occurred was when facing the Celestial Clan. Could it be that the Odin who created this Odin shirt has a strength at the level of the Celestial Clan? Odin had to guess this way, feeling like he was defeated. How could Odin from other universes be so powerful? The more Odin thought about it, the more frightened he felt. He didn't expect that the water in the multiverse was so deep. The Odin of a certain universe had combat power that far surpassed his own. The more he thought about it, the more he, the king of the 9 realms, felt tremendous pressure. I haven't felt this way for a long time. With this suit and my Odin power, even if I encounter the Celestials again in the future, I will have a way to fight against them. Odin clenched his fists, a fire rose in his heart, and his ambition burned again. He originally thought that it was impossible for Yishui to suffer the humiliation of being defeated by the Celestial God group, but now it seems that there is still a chance. Lord Odin, Lord Eitri, the Dwarf King, is here. At this time a guard came over and said, "Very good." After Odin heard this, he took Odin's shirt and left here. The dwarf planet is the most outstanding weapon craftsman in the 9 realms. They have created countless magic weapons, including the Spear of Odin. The purpose of Odin calling Ikki was to let him study Odin's shirt to see if he could imitate it. Oops. Lord Odin, where did you get this armor? I have never seen this material before. Even the best materials on my planet cannot match it. Ikki said in disbelief. He thought to himself that he was the #1 craftsman and could pick up any weapon at his fingertips. But as soon as he came into contact with this Odin shirt, he felt that a door to a new world had opened. The deeper he studied it, the more profound it became. He really couldn't figure out what kind of material it was. Is there no way to imitate it? Odin asked. Ikki shook his head helplessly and sighed. Your question is really embarrassing for me. I can't get the materials for this suit at all, let alone substitutes. If I try to imitate it with other materials, the effect will be greatly reduced. And the most important thing is that I feel that it contains extremely amazing energy. I think the power of the armor actually comes from the energy contained in it. Without this energy, the counterfeit armor will only be stronger. Quote. Ikki said helplessly. These difficulties are also a big blow to him. Odin was not surprised after hearing this. He had already expected this result. Then he couldn't help but recall the past. He remembered that the celestial group wore very terrifying armor with amazing energy inside. If only we could snatch their armor. What are you thinking about? Odin felt that he was a little distracted. He actually wanted to cause trouble for the gods. That would have many serious consequences. Lord Odin. At this time a guard came over. Lord Thor has woken up. Guard report. Well, just wake up. Odin was slightly relieved after hearing this. Although Thor did things without thinking and almost caused a big disaster, he was his son after all. It's just that he is very emotionally unstable now. The guard didn't look very good. What's the meaning? After hearing this, Odin felt bad and frowned. After Lord Thor woke up, he clamored to enter the Red Sea world, saying that he wanted to avenge his shame and take revenge. The guard replied. That idiot. Don't you know it's wrong? Odin couldn't help but widen his eyes after hearing this. After finally saving his life, not only did he not reflect on it, he was also so impulsive. This makes Odin really want to beat this stupid son. Take me there. Odin roared angrily and left the hall to find Thor. At this time, Thor ran out of the infirmary and went to find Odin. There are some guards chasing behind to stop Thor, including Loki. Treason. What are you doing? Odin descends from the sky and angrily scolds Thor. Father, please let me enter that world. As soon as Thor saw Odin, he immediately made his request. What are you going to do? After hearing this, Odin had to yell out worriedly. I want to destroy those monsters. I am Thor, the most glorious warrior in Asgard, how can I accept such a defeat? Thor shouted angrily. Asshole. Don't you know how to reflect? After hearing this, Odin shouted with great dissatisfaction. Thor had to be stunned for a moment and dared not speak out. It was because of your recklessness that you casually entered the unknown world, which almost led to a huge crisis. You even almost killed your friends. Odin began to accuse Thor of what he had done wrong. Ah, by the way, you didn't obey my orders and went to Jotunheim to cause trouble, and I didn't even settle the score. However, Thor didn't even think that he had done anything wrong. Instead, he felt that he was right. I am in Jotunheim to make the ice giant pay the price for invading us. What's wrong with me? The only fault is that I don't understand that the combat power of the unknown world is being plotted. If I were allowed to lead enough soldiers, I would have done it long ago. Just take them. Thor replied with great reluctance. And I entered that world to open up new territories as the king of Asgard and rescue the suffering people. Asgard doesn't need to open up new territories. What's more, you're not the king yet. After hearing this, Odin couldn't help but raise his voice and yell. I thought you were ready, but I was wrong. You are actually not good at all. Not only as a king, you are also not qualified as a prince. When Thor heard that his father actually said that he was not the one, his self-esteem was immediately severely hit, and he felt extremely unwilling. He considers himself the strongest warrior in Asgard besides Odin. How could he be so miserable when he was admired by thousands of people? So what about you? As a king, you are offended by your enemies, but you are unwilling to fight back. Have you become timid with your age? Thor didn't know where he got the courage to scold his father like this. When Loki and other guards nearby heard this, their expressions changed, their mouths opened wide, and they looked confused, not knowing what to say. The atmosphere became particularly heavy at this moment, and Odin did not make a sound or show any sign of anger. On the contrary, his expression looked particularly calm. However, everyone can see that this is just the calm before the storm. Now Thor also felt as if he had said something wrong, but it was impossible for him to take it back after the words were spoken, so he just stared at Odin. Buzz buzz. At this moment, a buzzing sound came, and Odin's shirt flew over without knowing when, right above everyone's heads. The next second, Odin's shirt automatically disintegrated and turned into countless parts, which were worn on Odin's body. Odin put on Odin's shirt, holding a sword in his left hand and a gun in his right hand. He looked extremely majestic, exuding an extremely terrifying aura just by standing there. Everyone present felt so stressed that they almost couldn't breathe. It seems that I pampered you too much. Thor, I have decided that you will be exiled to the atrium to reflect. After Odin finished speaking, extremely dazzling energy erupted from his body. After Thor was touched by the energy, he had no room to resist and was directly knocked away. He flew high into the sky from the palace without stopping, and kept flying towards the Rainbow Bridge. Like a shooting star, it attracts the attention of countless passers-by. Boom, boom. Thor landed heavily on the ground of the Rainbow Bridge. Heimdall next to him was not very clever and didn't know what was going on. Then Odin didn't know when he appeared here, and no one saw his movements. Father. Thor tried hard to remember, but he couldn't use any strength in his body. The blow just now almost killed him. Odin didn't care about his son's condition, but picked up Mjolnir and pointed it at Thor with a thought in his mind. The next second, the power in Thor's body poured out uncontrollably and was injected into Thor's hammer. Heimdall, lower the Rainbow Bridge to the atrium. After hearing Odin's order, Heimdall dared not resist. He immediately inserted his sword into the controller and lowered the Rainbow Bridge. Then Odin waved his hand and created a violent storm that blew him away into the Bifrost, giving Thor no chance to resist. After doing this, he kept whispering to Mjolnir. If you are qualified, you can possess the power of the God of Thunder. After imbuing Mjolnir with his blessing, he immediately threw the hammer into the Bifrost. I feel less uncomfortable. Odin looked at himself and said. During this time, he was in the state of entering a long sleep to regulate the divine power in his body. I've been feeling drowsy these past few days, and I can't seem to hold on anymore. But after putting on Odin's shirt, he felt that his power was much more stable. It seemed that it was because of the balance maintained by the shirt, or because he was integrated into the shirt. In short, as long as Odin keeps wearing the Odin shirt, he can avoid Odin's sleep. This was good for Odin, he was afraid that there might be some danger while he was sleeping. The crisis of the contained objects made him feel quite extraordinary. Now an unknown evil god who likes to cause doomsday has appeared, and he doesn't know what will appear next. So Odin decided to wear the shirt all the time during this period, just in time to adapt to the new power. Speaking of which, this armor has been giving me some feedback about the armor. God's armor. What is that? A warrior under Odin's command in another universe. When Odin was wearing this Odin armor, some designs and molded products of the armor kept popping up in his mind. He had never seen it before, but he knew it was called Shen Do Yi. It seemed that this shirt gave him not only combat power, but also some knowledge, so he was going back to the palace to study it carefully. Just then Loki rushed over. Although he didn't see the famous scene, he probably understood what was going on. Your brother needs to go down and gain experience. Don't do stupid things to me like him. Odin ordered as he passed by Loki. I understand, but father, I still have something to ask you. Loki suddenly said this, and then slowly opened his sleeves. I saw that his wrist turned into skin like an ice giant. When is this? When Odin saw this, his pupils shrank and he couldn't help but take a breath. I appeared when I was testing Frostmourne. Am I cursed? When Loki spoke, his voice couldn't help but tremble. Come with me. After Odin finished speaking, he grabbed Loki, and then the two of them disappeared at the same time. Heimdall next to him looked at this scene and had to say with emotion, Lord Odin has become more powerful. At this time, in a desert town in Mexico, Earth. Thor fell heavily to the ground and stood up with great difficulty. The discomfort of having his divine power taken away made it difficult for him to even stand still. Heimdall lowers the Bifrost. Thor shouted to the sky, trying to call Heimdall. However, now he cannot transmit his voice to Asgard at all. But Thor still refused to give up. Heimdall, I know you can hear me, put down the rainbow bridge quickly. Please give way to that. Just then Xie Yun's voice came. After Thor heard the sound, he had to turn around in confusion, and saw a figure approaching quickly and colliding with him. Boom. The movement caused by this was not small, and it directly knocked Thor's whole body away. Dead, I really hit someone. After Xie Yun stopped, he looked confused. He didn't want to do editing today, so he simply came out to test his abilities. The high-speed movement of the Weeping Angel, the fire breathing of the Little Fire Man, the carnivorous vines, the summoning of alien creatures, the immortality of the Shy Ghost, and so on. With so many abilities, he planned to find a place where no one was around to test them, and just use high-speed movement to run around. It was best to find this place. Unexpectedly, it was difficult to break and a person was knocked off. Don't kill someone. Xie Yun quickly went over to check on Thor. Fortunately, the person is okay. Huh. Hey, why does this face look so familiar? Xie Yun looked at Thor's face and felt that it looked very familiar, and then he was immediately stunned. Isn't this the god of thunder? Hey, wait a minute, this environment is not the scene in Thor 1. I just happened to catch up with Thor being exiled. What a coincidence. Unexpectedly, the first hero he came into contact with was Thor, which made Xie Yun excited. But then he thought of something. Wait a minute, I remember to stay here for a while. When Xie Yun thought of this, a car light shone over him. He turned around and saw a car rushing over like an out-of-control wild horse. Tony Stark's mansion. He was sorting out information on various contained objects in the villa. Especially Death Star and Weeping Angel, who are now imprisoned in S.H.I.E.L.D. The Death Star is difficult to trap with any metal and requires frequent injections of freezing gas and anesthetics. As for the Weeping Angels, no matter how much Tony Stark studied them, he could not get any useful information even with the use of the Void Engine. Jarvis, how is the project I mentioned earlier? Tony Stark asked. Sir, cryo weapons, weather controllers, and projects to strengthen the Mark armor have all been generated, and a perfect plan has been arranged. Jarvis reports. Good to start buying materials for crafting, we need more power. After Tony finished speaking, he stood up and mobilized the gene pool in the Void Engine. He discovered that there are many alien race genes here, and according to introduction, each one is more powerful than humans. Now that the Earth is facing more and more crises, he must transform himself. Void Engine, I want to transform myself into an angel gene. Tony said. As a Westerner, he naturally had a very good impression of angels. He was curious about what it would be like if he became an angel. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.